Chapter 497. Ding Ming had not guessed wrong about the so-called brain environment. The teleportation array in the giant pit was clearly more advanced than the one Xinguang biotechnology had. Not only did it have the ability to teleport, but could also extract one's memories and simulate the scenes that left a deep impression in one's memory. It was almost an exact replica of the real world. The Singularity explained, according to the current settings of the array, you will encounter the strongest opponent in your memory. It waved its hand as it explained, and the scene in front of him changed again. Ding Ming found himself back at the leisure camp of the Water Sakura Society on the Heavenly War Planet. There were two people in the square who were equally locked in a fierce battle. Upon closer inspection, it was Lu Qing and Lin Aoxue. Could it be that Lin Aoxue was the most powerful person among the people Lu Qing had fought? The Singularity waved its hand again, and the scene changed again. This time, the scene was not one that Ding Ming was familiar with. This place seemed to be a strange ice cellar. The temperature was so low that it made one's hair stand on end. The cave was covered in a layer of unchanging ice, and there was a strong wind blowing in the air like a sharp blade. In this extremely cold environment, one could see a person wielding a long sword on top of a pile of snow, fighting with all his might in the cold wind and ice. This person was Dan Teng. Ding Ming could not help but sigh when he saw Dan Teng's dodging movements, the sharpness and viciousness of his sword, and the violent aura that erupted from his body. He felt that this Dan Teng was not simple, but he did not expect him to be so powerful. This was because Dan Teng was facing 5 opponents. Not 5 people, but 5 giant snowmen made of ice and snow. These snowmen seemed to be unkillable. Once they were cut into pieces, they would quickly gather together and revive on the ground. This kind of battle was simply endless. What the hell was this place? The Singularity waved its hand again, and all the scenes disappeared. Ding Ming once again arrived at the center of the temple. You mean that in the brain illusion, only by defeating the strongest opponent in your memory can you be considered to have passed the test and come here? Ding Ming probed. The Singularity said, in theory, there is no problem with this statement, but in reality, it is impossible. Ding Ming frowned and asked why. The Singularity replied, as I said just now, this place is a strategic weapon. From the moment you step into the teleportation array, all your memories of coming to this star field will be erased, and you'll be teleported back. Of course, if you insist on continuing to search, this will form an endless loop until you are exhausted and the starship's energy is exhausted. In the end, you will be trapped here alive. So far, as many as 13 civilizations have been trapped here. Ding Ming was horrified. You're saying that the only way out is to turn around and go back the way we came, and then everything here will be the same as before we set off. We won't know anything. She nodded and said, yes. Not knowing anything is one of the safest laws in this universe. If a person doesn't know anything, no one will touch them. They will be safe. Ding Ming also understood this principle. The less one knew, the better. However, he was still somewhat unwilling to give up. But we still entered the teleportation array and were teleported into the brain illusion. Why is that? The Singularity glanced at him. You and Junling were able to enter because you have our race's weapons. This proves that you are at least related to our race. Therefore, the system did not wipe you out and allowed you to enter. As for the others, because they entered with Junling, according to the Maoxing laws, they're allowed to pass by default. Ding Ming said, after they defeated their respective strong opponents, can they also be teleported here? The Singularity immediately denied it. It is impossible for them to defeat them. Ding Ming was stunned. Why? The Singularity said proudly, the person who designed this brain illusion defense array is a genius. Although the simulated enemies are similar to the people in your memories, they are far stronger than you. Even if the experts from other God-level civilizations invade, as long as their memories are read, they are destined to never be able to enter the true core from the moment they are read. In terms of probability, the success rate of your group is less than 0. 1%. Ding Ming fell silent. He knew very well what this probability meant. Unless a miracle happened, No one would be able to pass through the brain illusion. Why did they set up such a powerful defense array? Dingmeng could not help but ask. The singularity glanced at him again. Because this place concerns an important secret of the Maoxing civilization. Almost all outsiders will be blocked. Therefore, the existence of the mind domain's illusion will block most people. I believe you should understand what I mean by this. Dingmeng fell silent again. According to what the singularity said, Junling, Lu Qing, and the others would be trapped in the brain illusion forever. They would struggle bitterly against strong enemies and eventually die of exhaustion. The logic was simple. In this world, there was only one kind of person who could truly keep a major secret, and that was the dead. This was because the dead would never be able to speak. However, this ending was not what Dingmeng wanted to see. The singularity seemed to have seen through his thoughts and continued. You don't have to worry too much. In fact, the person who decides whether they live or die is not the mastermind array, but you. Dingmeng said in surprise, Me? The singularity said proudly, You were able to defeat Chu Ming Liang, but that does not mean you have truly defeated him. In fact, in the brain illusion just now, you should have felt that your opponent's foundation was extremely strong. He was not someone you could have easily killed with a simple strike. Dingmeng nodded. He also agreed with what the singularity said. This was because the final strike that killed Chu Ming Liang had used up all of his strength. The key was that he had been seriously injured. If Chu Ming Liang had not been killed and still had some strength left, the person who would have died in the end would have been him. He was starting to understand the design of this defense matrix. The simulated opponent would always be a little bit stronger than you. For people at Dingmeng's level, the result of that little bit would be a crushing death. The singularity continued. However, during your battle with Chu Ming Liang, the system discovered that the Maoxing soul imprint on your forehead has a powerful self-protection function. Not only did it protect itself, but it also protected you. This is quite rare in our race. It can be said that it has never happened before. Dingmeng did not answer. Although he did not understand the Maoxing civilization very well, he understood Little Rascal. He knew that Little Rascal would not hesitate to destroy itself for him. This was the rationality of value. It could bring about devastating disasters, but it could also create earth-shattering miracles. This was the difference between a higher civilization and a lower race. The singularity suddenly began to pace back and forth in the center of the hall. After a long time, he slowly said, Do you know how far the Maoxing civilization is from here? This was also a question that Dingmeng had always been curious about. How far is it? The singularity sighed, which was rare. The real Maoxing civilization is located at the core of this universe. It is made up of billions of galaxies, main galaxies, galaxy groups, galaxy clusters, super galaxy clusters, and super interstellar cloud clusters. That place is called the Ortega Interstellar Great Wall. It is more than 120 billion light years away from here. Dingmeng was really speechless this time. 120 billion light years. This was a distance that would make one feel despair to the point of numbness. In the known observation area of mankind, this universe was only 6 billion light years. In the calculated distance, the diameter of the universe was more than 98 billion light years. However, the Maoxing civilization was still outside this range. It should be known that the universe was expanding endlessly. Up until now, the Maoxing civilization was probably even further away. With the current navigation technology of the human world, they could only reach third-level warp speed. Even if they knew the precise location of the Ortega Interstellar Great Wall, it would still take hundreds of thousands or even millions of years for a fleet to fly. Even if they had unlimited energy, they would still need to jump thousands or even tens of thousands of years by means of space jumps. For humans, this was a destination that they would never be able to reach. It could only exist in their imagination. Dingmeng muttered, But your Maoxing civilization has traveled such a long distance and arrived here. The singularity revealed a look of admiration. Actually, with the level of divine light technology, it is impossible for them to travel such a long time. Dingmeng said, Then how did you get here? The Singularity said, the reason why a God-class civilization can perform interstellar transmissions is not because of technology, but because the life forms of a God-class civilization can adapt to multidimensional space. Ding Ming suddenly realized that the Mao Xing people were most likely four-dimensional, five-dimensional, or even multidimensional life forms. Therefore, they could control time and space to perform interstellar transmissions. This was a good explanation for why Mao Xing people like Little Rascal could not truly die and could still survive in the form of spirit bodies and imprints. It was because they were all high-level life forms in the universe. The Singularity said, but this star field is a three-dimensional space. According to the laws of the universe, we can only teleport to the edge of this interstellar space. We can't really enter it. This time, there was no need for him to explain in detail. Ding Ming took the initiative to ask, if you want to enter our world, you have to undergo dimensional reduction modification? The Singularity said, dimensional reduction modification is not difficult for divine light technology, but for the Mao Xing people, their strength will be greatly reduced. It can even be said that after the modification, the Mao Xing people will no longer be pure Mao Xing people. They will become humanoid life forms just like you. Ding Ming nodded. But if it's to avoid being hunted down by strong enemies and keep important secrets, I think you'll think it's worth it. The Singularity gave him a deep look. You should understand the existence of this place now, right? Ding Ming took a deep breath. It was not a coincidence that a high-end technology like divine light technology would frequently appear in the star field where the human world was located. It was brought here by the Mao Xing people who had fled. The former SS Expedition and Madison were the scattered locations of the Mao Xing people scattered throughout the star field, and this place was very likely where the core of the civilization was located. Ding Ming sighed and said, I understand now. Our human world is really too remote in the universe. This is undoubtedly the ideal place for you to take refuge. The Singularity waved and said, this is also why the system let you in. Come, you still have to go through the final test. This also concerns the life and death of your companions. Chapter 498. In the center of the temple, the Singularity waved its hand casually, and all the clothes on the throne disappeared. The Singularity gestured, please. Ding Ming said hesitantly, you want me to go up there? The Singularity's voice turned serious. You don't have a choice. Ding Ming glanced at the Singularity that resembled Dai Yi. Why'd I have to go up there? Do you want me to become a general of the Mao Xing? The Singularity said in a deep voice, you can choose not to, but I'll erase your memories of this period and send you back to the Supreme One. Please believe me when I say that I'm in control of everything in this galaxy that you've named the Rainbow Galaxy. Ding Ming took a deep breath and slowly walked toward the throne. It wasn't that he believed in the oddity, but that he was very curious about everything about this shrine. From a certain point of view, Little Rascal was definitely related to this place. After slowly sitting down on the throne, the Singularity clapped its hands gently. An extremely dazzling light burst out from all directions of the temple. It was the same kind of intense light that he had encountered at the teleportation portal in the crater. Ding Ming was instantly blinded. His retinal nerves were damaged, and his brain immediately throbbed with pain. Ding Ming did not think too much about it. He quickly closed his eyes and began to circulate the 9 origins, trying his best to dispel the negative effects. The Singularity's voice turned cold. I want to remind you that in the past 13,527 years, you're the 183rd person qualified to sit on this seat. The 182 people before you have all died on this seat. I hope you won't disappoint me. It would be impossible for Ding Ming to not be afraid. Anyone who could be allowed into this temple by the Matrix through the brain environment, be it humans or life forms from other civilizations, was definitely not mediocre. The people before him had all died without exception. Now it was his turn. Ding Ming gritted his teeth and said, come on. The Singularity clapped its hands twice this time. Ding Ming suddenly felt the light in the temple get stronger. This was no longer just light, but but an extremely terrifying and powerful energy. That's right, it was the familiar energy source of Xinguang technology. However, this energy source was much more powerful than any energy source he had encountered in the past. It was far more powerful. If one were to say that origin ability users were created by absorbing the bits and pieces of origin ability energy in the air, then Ding Meng would be considered one of the best origin ability users in the human world. This was because the amount of origin ability energy he absorbed was dozens of times more than an ordinary origin ability user. As for the Diamond Star fusing art, the first time, the second time, the third time, the fourth time, until the eighth time, he was able to refine pure origin power. This made Ding Meng a rare genius in the Federal Empire. It was not until he came into contact with the warehouse of Xinguang technology on the SS expedition that he realized the difference between the human world and the extraterrestrial civilization. Just an ordinary warehouse of Xinguang technology was enough to attract the covetous eyes of a strange life form like the droplet. Such energy was even enough for a human starship to perform a space jump of hundreds of light years in the space-time tunnel. However, at this moment, the Xinguang energy emitted from all around him was at least 1,000 times more pure than the energy on the SS expedition. The moment the light spread out, Ding Meng felt as if he was in a vast ocean. Every water droplet around him was an origin ability energy that was forcefully injected into his body. Previously, on Azure Tree Planet, according to the super life form, there was a lack of energy. Now, there was an extreme excess of energy. With such a terrifying influx of energy, Ding Meng felt that his heartbeat and blood flow had accelerated by at least 50 times. Not only were the 9 origin points operating wildly, but they were also expanding at a speed visible to the naked eye. It should be known that the origin points were on the micron scale. Every increase of 1 micron was a dream for other origin ability users. It meant that one's strength and level would increase exponentially. If this had happened in the past, Ding Meng would have probably gone crazy with joy, but now, Ding Meng was really going crazy. His eyes, nostrils, mouth, and ears were constantly oozing golden blood. Even his pores were oozing golden blood. His entire person looked like a golden man. This situation was what Little Rascal had described as body explosion. When a container was filled to the brim with water, if it was forcefully injected, the container would explode. This kind of pain was akin to being sliced into pieces. Only the person involved would be able to understand it. At this critical moment, Xiao AI decisively said, "Shorten your telekinetic field of vision and channel this energy into your brain. Let it fill your primary space of consciousness." Ding Meng understood what she meant. Since there was so much energy, he might as well use this opportunity to develop his brain and increase the amount of energy he could absorb by increasing his telekinesis. As his brain frequency increased, he could clearly see that the firmament within his primary space of consciousness had suddenly become brighter. The little house by the beach was illuminated by the rising sun, and the projection was already brandishing a long sword and beginning to practice martial arts. Even the projection of Zheng Ming was receiving the baptism of the sun's rays, madly devouring the energy. It was also constantly taking shape at a speed visible to the naked eye. However, this amount of absorption was still far from enough. Ding Meng, who was sitting on the throne, not only was his entire body in incomparable pain, but it was also so heavy that he found it difficult to even lift his head. Release the divine green spirit tree and construct a telekinetic model, Xiao AI ordered in a deep voice. The projection of the divine green spirit tree appeared in front of the throne in the blink of an eye. The blurry projection of the tree also became clear within a minute, completely taking on the form of a materialized tree. At the same time, tentacles took shape, tree roots took shape, tree trunk took shape, branches and leaves took shape. Soon, the entire tree was enveloped by a translucent spherical protective cover. This was clearly the divine green spirit tree's evergreen illusory spirit technique. However, This was far from enough to withstand the constant influx of divine light energy. The protective cover rapidly materialized and then exploded with a bang. This was already the limit. Ding Meng gritted his teeth so hard that fresh blood spurted out. However, he was unwilling to give up, because if he could not hold on at this time, then he would really explode and die. Death is not something to be afraid of. A person is destined from the moment he is born to the moment he dies. He has completed the path he should have taken and completed the mission he should have completed. This is something he must experience in his life. At this critical juncture, Ding Meng suddenly heard Big Brother Zheng Ming's heroic words from back then. However, Ding Meng did not want to die. His path had not yet been completed, and his mission had not yet been completed. I definitely cannot die here. With a thought, the energy was once again directed towards the divine green spirit tree. The divine tree began to grow healthily, rapidly expanding from a meter tall into a towering tree, directly filling the temple. The entire tree was luxuriant with leaves and lush green. It could be said that during this process, not only had Ding Meng learned all of the divine green spirit techniques, but he had also mastered them through a comprehensive study. He had even reached the pinnacle of perfection. However, the divine light energy was simply endless, and it was still madly pouring in. Forget it, Xiao AI sighed helplessly. You've already done everything you can do. You've already done your best. She did not finish her sentence. In fact, Ding Meng also understood that death was imminent. This divine light energy was simply too heaven-defying. Energy of this scale was simply not something that someone of his level could completely contain. The human body was so weak compared to the ocean, it was as insignificant as a speck of dust. However, at this moment, the spiritual imprint on his forehead finally emitted a strong golden light. It was like a magnet, sucking in almost all of the white light in the temple, leaving only a small portion outside. Ding Meng instantly felt the mountain-like pressure disappear, but the remaining energy was still forcibly pouring in. This was also something that he could not bear. Xiao AI's spirit was shaken, and she said loudly, "Enter the intermediate space of consciousness and forcibly deconstruct the 10th origin of the Diamond Star technique." As soon as she finished speaking, Ding Meng's vision suddenly changed. All of the light suddenly disappeared, all of the pressure disappeared, and all of the sounds ceased to exist. The entire world was incomparably quiet, as if even the sound of his heartbeat had disappeared. His body seemed to have lost control, turning into a floating soul, wandering in the depths of the endless sea of stars in the vast universe. Under the bright and spectacular stars, an ancient Kuan Peng starship flew out from the depths of the Milky Way. The starship's overall damage was very high. The surface of the starship was bumpy, and the ion thruster on the right wing seemed to have been extinguished. Only the boosters on the left wing and the tail were emitting weak crystal flames, like an injured bird struggling. It was obvious that the starship had encountered a fierce battle in space. It was not easy for it to fly here. Inside the starship, the command hall was brightly lit. Dozens of staff members were busy at their respective workstations. The atmosphere in the hall was very tense. On a giant light screen in the center, the situation in the experiment hall was displayed. A huge and transparent nutrient water ball was suspended in the air above the hall. Countless pipes were connected to the surface of the water ball, and various unknown liquids were being injected into it. Inside the water ball, a human girl of about 10 years old was curled up into a ball, sleeping quietly. The girl had short blonde hair, and the outline of her face was clear. Her skin was very pale, probably because she had been immersed in water for a long time. It gave people the impression that she was severely malnourished. However, it was undeniable that although the girl was young, she was an out-and-out beauty. Her frail body was wrapped in a white towel, and she wore a bronze wristband on her wrist, which was engraved with exquisite and mysterious striped patterns. Other than that, there was nothing else on her body. The girl's expression was very indifferent. Although she was in a deep sleep, you could feel that she had a noble, mysterious, and indifferent temperament all over her body. Obviously, on this starship, the girl was definitely a very special existence. On the other side of the command hall, the central light screen was constantly refreshing the real-time data. Gene body compatibility, 100% heart rate, 16 beats per minute body temperature, 26 degrees breathing, 4 times per minute brain frequency, 58 Hz fatigue, 0% infection degree, none health state, subhealth, level 3. These rows of data showed that the girl was in a very bad state. Because she was not in the cryogenic chamber, she could wake up at any time in this state, but she could also die at any time. Next to the main control console, a white-haired old man stood quietly, staring intently at the changes in the data on the screen. From his eyes, one could see how much he valued the girl. However, his expression was very haggard, and his eyes were bloodshot. This was because for this girl, he had put in an unprecedented amount of effort. Almost all the plans had been implemented, but the girl still had not woken up. The only thing that could be done now was to wait quietly. No one knew which would come first, the accident or tomorrow. Chapter 499. Time seemed to stand still as they drifted through the vast universe. In a closed environment like the starship's command hall, time seemed to have lost its meaning. The only thing everyone could do was wait for the girl to wake up. The white-haired old man stood straight and stared at the screen in a daze, like an emotionless statue. After an unknown amount of time, the data on the central screen remained motionless. There was no change at all. A young man walked over from the main control panel and said carefully, "Doctor, you've been working for a long time. Why don't you take a break?" "No need." The doctor spat out 2 cold words without even turning his head. The young man sighed secretly. He could not go against the doctor's will. In fact, no one could go against the doctor's will. Once he had decided on something, no one could change it. He had to carry it out. The doctor suddenly said, "Shao AI." As soon as he said that, countless rays descended from the sky and combined into a lifelike mirror image of a girl. This girl was quite similar to the girl in the nutrition water ball, but she was obviously a few years older. She was about 20 years old. If the girl was full of mysterious and noble temperament, then Shao AI had a maturity and stability that did not match her age. "Dr. Harksini, what can I do for you?" Shao AI asked respectfully. "Which gene body is this?" Dr. Harksini still had no expression. Shao AI immediately replied, "Number 164367. Hearing this number, the young man sighed even harder. He was the only one who knew what this number meant. The experiment hall had tested 164,366 gene bodies. There were all kinds of gene bodies, including humans, larvae, monsters, foreign objects, life forms, and even plants and single cells. Most of them were humans, but all of them failed and died without exception. Only the girl in front of him had a 100% match and had survived. This kind of experiment could only be conducted in outer space. If it entered the Federation's territory, it would be a prohibited crime against humanity. The Federation would never allow experiments on living people. This young girl was the 164367 test subject. She also had a special identity. She was the only granddaughter of Dr. Harson. She was actually used as a living experiment by the doctor himself. From this, one could see how cruel and ruthless the doctor was. However, the young man did not think so. The doctor had done his best for this experiment and was under tremendous pressure from the regulators and investors. He had no more subjects to use in the experiment, so he had no choice but to send his granddaughter to the experiment hall. This was a desperate gamble. Sometimes the lunatics in the eyes of outsiders were actually geniuses in the eyes of scientists. Only geniuses would dare to gamble and take such crazy risks. In the eyes of the young man, the doctor was such a genius. He had dedicated everything he had to biological research. He had spent his whole life searching for the truth and was not bothered by the secular world. Dr. Harson was also in a trance. The 164,367th experimental subject meant that it was the last one. It was impossible for there to be a 164,368th experimental subject. He had no way out. The girl in the water ball was his last hope. While he was deep in thought, the alloy door of the command hall opened automatically. A group of people walked in with their heads held high, led by a man in a suit. The man in the suit walked over. "Doctor, is there still no progress?" Dr. Harson glanced at him and did not answer. He did not have a good impression of the regulators. The man in the suit did not mind. He knew the doctor's temper, but this time he did not come alone. The investors were also here. He had to introduce them. "Doctor, this is Mr. Chu Mingfeng. He is here to visit you on behalf of the Haitian group." The middle-aged man named Chu Mingfeng was also in a suit and leather shoes. He stepped forward and stretched out his hand in a friendly manner. "Doctor, I have heard a lot about you. It is a pleasure to meet you." "Humph." The doctor snorted. He did not answer or shake hands. In his opinion, Chu Mingfeng was not here to visit him. What the Haitian group really wanted to see was the result, not the person. In the eyes of businessmen, there were only benefits and people who created benefits. There were no simple people. Seeing the doctor's indifference, the man in the suit could only cough awkwardly. "Doctor, this time it has been more than 100 days. It is the longest time. Is there still no progress?" This time, the doctor was forced to answer. "You don't understand." "Yes, in the field of expertise, I really don't understand." The man in the suit responded in a tone that was neither humble nor overbearing. "But doctor, the amount of money we've invested now is already an astronomical figure, and the material and manpower are also quite tight. I hope you can understand the pressure I'm under." Dr. Hark Sinny frowned. "What pressure can you have?" The man in the suit smiled. "Doctor, you are good at scientific and technological research, but you don't understand venture capital. Investment has always been about returns. Now that we have invested such a huge amount of resources, but the progress is zero. If there is no return, it will be difficult for us to explain to the Haitian group." Dr. Hark Sinny sneered. "You don't understand anything at all. People like you only know about money. In your eyes, there is nothing else." As he spoke, he looked back at the central screen. "Once she wakes up, it means that my research is completely successful. The significance of her awakening is not something that can be compared with a few stinky money. It is not even qualified to be compared." The man in the suit's face was gloomy. "But without this stinky money, your research can't be carried out at all. You have ignored the power of money." "What did you say?" "My research can't be compared with money?" Dr. Hark Sinny was a little angry. He couldn't tolerate others criticizing his research results. "Forget it." Chu Mingfeng stepped forward and pulled the man in the suit away. He tried to use a gentle tone and asked, "Doctor, we, the investors, definitely respect you. I just want to ask, when will your granddaughter wake up?" Dr. Hark Sinny was still angry. "This is hard to say. She may wake up at any time, or it may take 7 years to wake up." Chu Mingfeng frowned. 7 years? Why does it take so long?" "Yes." Dr. Hark Sinny sighed helplessly. "She is not an origin ability user. Her body's endurance is too weak. Although the fusion is successful now, she is still in the human development stage. She must wait for the body to mature and the major organs to function well before she can wake up. Once she wakes up, I will extract the genes. At that time, the technology will be fully mature." He only cared about his own explanation and didn't notice that Chu Mingfeng's expression was getting colder and colder. "Doctor, according to what you said, it is unknown whether she can wake up in 7 years." When he heard his question, the young man also felt that the atmosphere was not right. He quickly jumped out and explained, "The probability of waking up is very high. I have calculated that it is as high as 80%. Chu Mingfeng sighed. "To be honest, I personally support you, doctor. But the investment team behind us can't afford to wait so long." So Dr. Hark Sinny stared at him. "What do you mean?" Chu Mingfeng sighed. "Actually, I came this time to convey a message. The higher-ups of this project have lost their patience. Whether it succeeds or not, it is actually not that important." Dr. Hark Sinny and the young man were stunned at the same time. Could it be that after investing so much, they were going to give up at this juncture? The man in the suit jumped out again. "Yes, I will be in charge when the time comes." Dr. Hark Sinny suddenly fell silent. After a long time, He raised his head and said in a low voice, "I understand. I personally don't care. I believe in success. However, there are more than 100 assistants on this starship. They are all top talents in their field. I hope that they will be able to receive the remuneration in the agreement when they return to the Federation and be properly settled." Chu Mingfeng showed an apologetic expression. "I'm very sorry, Doctor. Please forgive me for not being able to do anything about your request. Even if it is conveyed to the higher-ups, I am afraid they will not approve it." Why? Dr. Harksini felt an inexplicable anger. These people work day and night, forgetting to eat and sleep. Shouldn't they be getting what they deserve? What you're doing is simply unethical. The man in the suit couldn't help but say, "Doctor, are you worthy of talking about ethics? You've sacrificed so many people for live experiments. You've disregarded the federal laws. When have you ever had any morals? You even used your own granddaughter for experiments. Is this what you call ethical?" Dr. Harksini was furious. "You don't know shit. I am doing this for the sake of great science." The man in the suit sneered disdainfully. "Science? It is a pity that you have been experimenting for so many years and have not produced any results. Are you worthy of talking about science? Things that can't produce any benefits are only worthy of being trash. You expect us to raise a bunch of trash? Don't even think about it. You bastard." Dr. Harksini was so angry that his body swayed. The young man next to him hurriedly supported him. "Now, I finally see the true colors of you people." Dr. Harksini was so angry that he was out of breath. After all, he was an ordinary human being. He was old and could not withstand such provocation. Moreover, with his prestige and authority, no one dared to say that he was trash. He could not even be the president of the Federation. At this moment, Xiao AI suddenly let out a surprised voice. "Doctor, she is awake." Everyone was shocked by this sentence and turned their eyes to the central screen. The real-time data on it had indeed changed. Heart rate, 32 beats per minute. Body temperature, 29.9 degrees. Breathing, 12 beats per minute. Brain frequency, 67 Hz. Fatigue, 0%. Infection rate, none. Health status, sub-health level -2. This was clearly a sign of recovery. In the nutrition ball, the girl's long eyelashes were trembling slightly. She seemed to have also felt the doctor's anger. Her brows were already furrowed, and her expression was very angry. The young man rushed to the main control panel and operated it in a panic. Not long after, he turned his head in surprise and said in a trembling voice, "Doctor, her heart rate is accelerating. Her blood pressure has returned to normal. Her brain is abnormally active, and her breathing has also increased to the standard of a normal human. She is really going to wake up." Dr. Harksini was not blinded by the great joy. He frowned and said, "No, she should not have woken up at this time. Could it be that Mao Xing?" Unfortunately, his words were ruthlessly interrupted because at this moment, the entire command hall flashed with red light, and the alarm was triggered. The system sounded, "Warning, warning, a large number of high-risk energy scans have been detected and have locked onto the ship. All crew members, please return to your positions." Chapter 500. What's the matter? Dr. Harksini turned to look at Xiao AI. Xiao AI didn't need to answer him because the ray above had already descended, and the real-time remote projection was generating a mirror image of the other party. It was a middle-aged officer with a dignified face and a fierce tone. "This is the Holy Grail Federation's interstellar patrol fleet. The nameless Kunping starship in front. Please turn off your engines and take the initiative to approach the fleet. Enter the port for inspection." Dr. Harksini Sinjabina E. Martinez, you have violated the Holy Grail Federation's Peaceful Order number 986 by conducting illegal human experiments without the Federation's permission. You have committed a serious crime against humanity. Please disarm immediately, stay where you are, and wait for our soldiers to arrest you peacefully. If there is any resistance, we will use force, and you will bear all the consequences." Turning his head again, the reconnaissance light screen of the main control console had clearly shown that in the space behind the Kunping starship, there were already 20 assault ships. The longsword logo on the hull was clear. It was indeed the Holy Grail Federation's patrol fleet. This star field was outer space. How could the Federation's patrol fleet appear, and with such precision? Dr. Harksini and the young man seemed to have thought of something. The two turned their eyes to the man in the suit and saw that the man in the suit and Chu Mingfeng were looking at them expressionlessly. This gloomy expression was enough to show that it was Chu Mingfeng who deliberately exposed the location of the starship. This reason was very easy to figure out. Chu Mingfeng boarded the starship not long ago, and only he could have attracted the patrol fleet. You, Dr. Harksini was furious. Despicable. The man in the suit sneered. Doctor, since the experimental subject is about to wake up, there is no need for you to stay. This was a direct confrontation. Dr. Harksini immediately reacted. The other party wanted to snatch the research results before the patrol fleet arrived and then kill him. Anyway, the patrol fleet would not pursue the matter because crimes against humanity were basically unconditional death. The military might even reward the Haitian group. Chu Mingfeng even thought of the wording. It was I who sneaked into the Kunpeng starship and provided the military with the detailed route coordinates. This person was guilty of the most heinous crimes and should be killed first. After that, the gene fusion technology was stolen by them forever, and no one knew about this secret anymore. Chu Mingfeng stared at him coldly and spat out 2 words, "Do it." The man in the suit had already taken out a photoelectric pistol and aimed it at the doctor. Be careful. At this critical moment, the young man rushed over and pushed the doctor to the ground. Show! A red light flashed. The young man's head fiercely raised. A large amount of blood spurted out from his mouth. The blood dyed the doctor's white coat red. Both of them fell heavily on the steel plate. Xiaoji, Xiao... Dr. Harksini exclaimed. Xiaoji leaned on the doctor's body. He used his own body to block the fatal shot, but the price was a fist-sized bloody hole in his back. Doctor! Xiaoji raised his head with great difficulty, a large amount of blood flowing out of his mouth. I've always believed that you would succeed. His voice was suddenly cut off because another ray of light came, and Xiaoji's whole head exploded with a bang, turning into a cloud of blood mist. Dr. Harksini was stunned. This was a student who had followed him for many years. He had always been conscientious, loyal, and respected him like a father. He had also raised him like a son, but he was killed in such a cruel way. An indescribable anger suddenly rose from his chest. Dr. Harksini didn't know where the strength came from, but he fiercely lifted Xiao Ji's body and madly rushed to the man in the suit. You animals! You old bastard! The man in the suit was too lazy to use his gun, so he simply kicked him to the ground. Look at yourself. What's the difference between you and trash? Dr. Harksini fell on his back. The ribs in his chest were broken, and a burst of blood rushed up. His vision blurred, and he almost fainted. At the same time, the girl in the water ball seemed to have received a heavy kick. Her entire body twitched violently. Any slight change in her would be the focus of everyone's attention. The real-time data on the screen had undergone a drastic change this time. Heart rate, 68 beats per minute. Body temperature, 35. 9 degrees. Breathing, 15 beats per minute. Brain frequency, 108 Hz. Fatigue, 0%. Infection rate, none. Health status, healthy level 1. Chu Mingfeng was shocked and ordered in a deep voice, the gene body is about to wake up. All of you, go and control her. You must take her away intact. He turned his head to look at the man in the suit. Get rid of the doctor and clean this place up. The man in the suit stepped forward with a grim smile. You old thing, I've served you for so many years. It will be too easy for you to shoot you. As he spoke, he stepped forward, grabbed Dr. Harksini's lapel with one hand, and easily lifted him up. Dr. Harksini was so angry that he couldn't help but spit a mouthful of blood on the man's face. You greedy animal, you'll die a horrible death. You dare spit on me? The man in the suit was furious. He waved his hand and punched the doctor, sending him flying. How could an ordinary old man with 1 foot in the grave be able to withstand a punch from an origin ability user? Dr. Harksini's body slammed into a workbench, and all the equipment on it broke into pieces. The doctor leaned against a pillar. Almost all the bones in his body were broken, and large amounts of blood flowed out of his mouth. He could no longer speak. At this moment, the girl in the water ball seemed to be stimulated by some inexplicable force. Her eyes opened with a whoosh, and her blue eyes burst out with a cold chill. She's awake. She's awake. She's really awake. The crowd suddenly began to cheer. Chu Mingfeng said sternly, "Catch her." With a bang, the water ball suddenly exploded. The girl flipped in the air, and she steadily knelt on one knee. Then, she slowly stood up, and the wrist guard on her hand emitted a dazzling cold light. Now, everyone could see that the girl had undergone a terrible change. The cold aura on her body had disappeared, and it was replaced by an extremely strong, murderous aura. The wrist guard turned into an eye of light, and the eye of light began to change shape. A moment later, it turned into a short, sharp halberd. This kind of rare weapon was almost lost and could only be seen in ancient times. Who would have thought that it would appear in the hands of a girl? And the girl's expression was extremely ferocious. Dr. Harksini continued to tremble. Not only was his body trembling, but even his voice was trembling. "Child, run. Although you've awakened, you're no match for them, cough, cough." It would have been better if he didn't speak, but once he did, more blood flowed out of his mouth. Xiao AI understood and immediately transmitted a message to the girl. "Hurry to the escape pod. You still have a chance to escape. When the Federation fleet catches up, you'll never be able to recover." The girl was unmoved. She slowly raised her head and looked at the surveillance camera on the ceiling. Her every move was being shown on the starship surveillance screen. As long as there was a screen on the starship, she could be seen. The girl's cold voice shocked everyone present. "Everyone has to die." From the surveillance screen, a group of heavily armed soldiers could be seen pouring into the experiment hall. All of their guns were pointed at her. A cruel smile flashed across the girl's lips. Then, she turned into a stream of light, like an electric arc that suddenly appeared in the experiment hall. It was twisted, strange, and fast. 1 second, only 1 second, the stream of light circled around the experiment hall at an incredible speed, then returned to its original position and transformed back into the girl's appearance. No one knew what had happened. The girl slowly turned around and calmly walked towards the exit door. "What's going on?" Chu Mingfeng was anxious. He quickly shouted into the comms channel. Special situation, special situation. Executing emergency plan. Authorized to fire." However, the soldiers around her seemed to have been enchanted. They stood there in a daze, as if they had forgotten to open fire. It wasn't until the girl's figure disappeared into the tunnel that a hair-raising scene finally appeared. All the limbs of the 60-odd soldiers were severed, and their heads were sent flying into the sky. Their bodies were also torn apart, turning into pieces. These pieces were very neat. Those with good eyesight could see that the size, volume, and dimensions of each piece of meat were exactly the same. They were neatly piled up in the middle of the hall, just like the meat products sold in the market. Seeing this scene, no one on the starship was envious. Instead, they wanted to vomit. Chu Mingfeng and the man in the suit were even more shocked. The girl's speed, her technique, her halberd, her martial arts, they had never seen or heard of any of this before. All of this subverted their understanding of the world. "Not good. She's coming for us," someone exclaimed. The surveillance screen clearly showed that the girl was walking through the main passage. She was walking towards the command center. "Stop her! Take her down!" Chu Mingfeng shouted. How could they stop her? In the passage, the soldiers opened fire. Energy bullets and shells rolled towards the girl like a tide. The girl did not panic. As she walked, she raised her right hand. The halberd in her hand began to spin rapidly, forming a circular disc. All the energy bullets hit the disc and scattered in all directions. Strong light flashed in the passage. The light seemed to illuminate Dr. Harksini's face. His face was very pale. It was unknown whether it was because his life was fading away or because he was too agitated. "Go. Take this opportunity to leave. Cough. Don't worry about me," Xiao AI said, Mao Xing's spirit body has completely merged with this body. The halberd weapon has been fully activated. No one is a match for her, but the body is too weak. There's a limit to how much energy it can take. If this continues, she won't be able to escape. The soldiers in the passage kept firing, but the disc kept rebounding. These human soldiers could not stop her at all. Not long after, the disc began to absorb the energy bullets. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a giant, fiery red light. The girl waved her hand, and the light rolled across the passage. Then there was nothing. Nothing meant there were no explosions, no screams, and no corpses. The passage had been deformed. Wherever the light passed, everything was vaporized and crushed into nothingness. Even the steel plates on the ground were no exception. Everything was melted, and the ground was reduced to a smoking ruin. Chu Mingfeng swallowed his saliva with difficulty. This was the gene fusion technology they had always wanted. This kind of modified warrior would be an invincible existence. But now, this invincible warrior was walking towards the command center like a god of death. The girl's voice once again resounded throughout the entire area. Ignorant people are doomed. Chapter 501. In space, the Kuan-Pung starship had already rushed into the K8 galaxy. The 5 suns of different colors were emitting brilliant lights, which are also the colors of hell. The more beautiful and brilliant something was, the closer it was to the dreadful death. Death was not only the end of life, but also a form. Just like absolute zero, everything would stop, solidify, and come to an end. Even the uncontrollable time would come to a standstill at this moment. Boom! The alloy door of the command center was shattered into pieces. The girl walked in with her head held high. All the armed forces on the starship had been wiped out by her. Now, other than the 100 or so staff members, only Chu Mingfeng and the man in the suit were left. It would be a lie to say that Chu Mingfeng and the man in the suit were not afraid. The girl was at most 16 or 17 years old, but her fighting power was at the level of a warlord. Moreover, the weapon in her hand was unprecedented and unpredictable. It killed without spilling blood, and you couldn't even see how it killed. The girl said coldly, "Two lowly ants, how dare you injure the doctor? This is unforgivable. Kneel down and accept your death." Chu Mingfeng took a deep breath. It was useless to say anything now. It seemed that the results of the research were still under the doctor's control. He suddenly flashed forward, as if he was about to make a move. In fact, this move was a feint. He pretended to use transient step to flash away, but in reality, he flashed again halfway. His target was the doctor. The doctor was still alive. As long as he could control the doctor, he was confident that he could control the girl. After all, the doctor was the girl's grandfather. Chu Mingfeng thought that he was fast enough, but the girl was faster. Just as his hand grabbed the doctor's neck, a piercing pain came from his palm. In an instant, his whole body was paralyzed. This pain made him uncontrollably scream like a pig being slaughtered. To be able to make an advanced combat master let out such a terrifying cry, one could imagine how painful it was. All the staff members knelt on the ground and held their heads with their hands. They looked at the hellish scene in front of them with terrified expressions. The girl stood in front of the academician, and the halberd in her hand pierced through Chu Mingfeng's palm. The light from the halberd spread to his arm like a wave, and wherever it passed, there was a sizzling sound. It was as if an invisible flame was burning his arm, and in the blink of an eye, his flesh and bones were reduced to nothingness. The strong light continued to spread until it covered his entire body. Strictly speaking, Chu Mingfeng was already dead, but the strong light turned him into a human shadow. The shadow seemed to be struggling. The girl said coldly, "An ant like you doesn't deserve to have a soul. Disappear." As soon as he finished speaking, the light exploded like a bubble, and Chu Mingfeng disappeared without a trace. It was as if he never existed in this world. Such a bizarre and terrifying annihilation was really like wiping out a piece of paper. It was simple, crude, cold, and merciless. The man in the suit was already dumbfounded. He had never seen such a situation before. He couldn't even imagine it. How could he still have the courage to resist? He ran to the door and fled. The girl snorted, "Ignorant!" She gently raised her hand, and the halberd was thrown into the air. It quickly transformed into a thin needle of light. The needle pierced through the air and shot towards a man in the suit. The man in the suit was halfway through when the needle pierced his heart. His body suddenly spasmed, and his body turned into a shadow of light. The shadow exploded with a bang, and he was no longer in this world. Not even his soul was left. The girl walked quickly to the academician and knelt in front of him. Her face was full of concern. "Academician, how are you? Are you okay?" She was like a god of death when facing the soldiers, and she easily turned hundreds of people on the starship into thin air. But in front of the academician, she really was like the academician's granddaughter. She behaved very obediently. The academician reached out a trembling hand and stroked the girl's golden hair. Little rascal," Little Rascal immediately responded, "I'm here, academician." The academician's gaze softened. You shouldn't have come," Little Rascal replied. "I could sense that you were in danger, so I had to come." The academician struggled to speak. "I've always wondered, was it right or wrong for me to fuse you into Ali's body? Now, I finally know the answer. I was right." Only Little Rascal could understand these words. She had fused with Ali's body, so she naturally inherited Ali's memories. If this was her past self, she would have already escaped through the escape pod. However, Ali's values and rationality prevailed over everything. She was not going to abandon the academician no matter what the outcome was. Cough, cough, cough. The academician coughed violently again, and blood spurted out of his mouth. "I'm so sorry. I didn't think you'd awaken in such a way." Little Rascal immediately offered words of consolation. "It's all right, academician. Everything will be fine. I'll take you to the medical bay." "It's too late." The academician's gaze fell upon the surveillance screen. The Kuan Pung starship had already been surrounded by over 20 assault ships from all directions. There was no way for it to escape. Little Rascal's human form was perhaps unmatched, but she was definitely no match for an interstellar fleet. If she resisted, the starship would explode, her physical body would be destroyed, and she would revert back to her spirit body form. Everything would return to square one, and perhaps the situation would be even worse. Xiao AI spoke at this moment. "Little Rascal, you can't fall into the hands of the humans. This patrol fleet is hostile, and we can't take this risk." Little Rascal nodded earnestly. "I understand." The academician stroked Little Rascal's hair again. "Little Rascal, are you afraid?" A warm smile finally appeared on Little Rascal's face. "Don't worry, academician. We'll carry out your wishes. I believe that we'll all be reunited in the near future." The academician also smiled. "Good girl. Good girl." Xiao AI issued an order in a solemn voice. "Activate the AI program backup plan and activate the Blood Green Coral Project 1. Final order, Cave Virus Project commences." The system voice said, "Authorization complete. The system is charging. The blood green coral material is being generated." At this moment, not only the command hall, but all the cabins of the Kuan Pung starship spewed out a green poisonous mist. This was the purest cave virus of the first generation, and also the academician's life's work. Dozens of workers could be seen as soon as they came into contact with the cave virus. Their bodies immediately mutated, and many of them collapsed on the spot. As the smoke continued to erupt, the green mist became thicker and thicker, gradually drowning everything on the starship. In space, the damaged Kuan Pung starship dragged a long tail as it slowly fell into the depths of the desert of the dead silent star. For some reason, the assault ships of the patrol fleet stopped chasing. These starships only stopped in outer space and didn't enter the atmosphere. As the starship fell into the desert, the last bit of energy was collected by the mainframe system. The light of the 5 sun stars dyed the sand into a mixture of colors. The colorful fine sand was like a rain of fog that covered the damaged ship body in waves. Day after day, year after year, the desert gradually returned to its original appearance. However, The Kuan Peng starship buried deep in the ground waited patiently. The academician and Little Rascal and Little AI all believed that there was fate. One day, the 164,368 gene body would arrive here and successfully fuse the K virus with the academician's genetic technology, awaken them, and give them a new life. From then on, a new generation of the greatest king would be born here and embark on a new journey. Little Rascal's voice seemed to ring in Ding Meng's ears. Our goal is to create a new greatest king and conquer the distant sea of stars. With a whoosh, Ding Meng exited the intermediate consciousness space. The scene in front of him was the content of the 10th origin of the Diamond Star technique. Ding Meng knew that if he could read all the content, it meant that the 10th origin had taken shape. He focused his telekinetic vision on his body and saw that the 10th origin had really appeared. It was located in the center of his brain. It was no longer in the shape of a dot, but an exquisite diamond embedded in his brain. The size of this diamond was larger than the previous 9 points combined. It was emitting a pure, bright, translucent energy to every part of the body, tempering the major organs, blood, and molecules. Not only was it splendid and spectacular, but it was also magnificent and indestructible. With a little practice of the Diamond Star melting technique, the energy from Shengguang technology that was pouring in from the outside world was now like a drizzle. It was easily smelted. Ding Meng could not help but ask, "Little AI, are you there?" Little AI's voice sounded very happy. "Ding Meng, I'm here." Ding Meng was a little emotional. "Little AI, when I was building, I saw you in the real world." Little AI said, "Do you have any thoughts?" Ding Meng thought for a moment and said, "I think you're very beautiful." Little AI was silent. Then she said, "Don't be in such a hurry to praise me. Carefully circulate your origin energy and see if you can find anything new." Ding Meng operated all 10 origin points at once this time. He quickly experienced a familiar feeling, as if someone very close to him was approaching him. "This aura is—" Ding Meng hesitated. A playful female voice suddenly rang out in his mind. "Ding Meng, you're so despicable. You're praising little AI behind my back. Am I not beautiful? You have such poor taste." This voice. Ding Meng was stunned. "Are you stupid?" The voice became even more dissatisfied. TSK. Look at that silly look on your face. Straight guys usually have the same expression as you." In that instant, Ding Meng felt a lump in his throat, and his eyes immediately reddened. This familiar voice that he had been yearning for day and night did not ring out in the virtual world, nor did it appear in the construction of the origin points. It was actually echoing in his mind. "Little Rascal, is that you?" Ding Meng called out softly. Chapter 502. Ding Meng was rarely emotional, so when he saw the tears in Ding Meng's eyes, Little Rascal's voice also choked up. "Ding Meng, you've worked hard these days. I know you've been running around for me. Although I can't speak, I can't break through, and I can't transmit information, I can see and hear everything you've done." Ding Meng felt as if something was stuck in his throat. He couldn't say anything because he wasn't good at using words to express his feelings. In this life, he had always lost and said goodbye. The little girl, the citizen officer, Ding Wenhe, Big Brother Zheng Ming, Yu Xingyang, Little Four, Xiao Shanzi. Only this time, he didn't lose anyone. Through his tireless efforts, Little Rascal had finally returned. Xiao AI gave a rare smile and said, "I remember you said many years ago that we would meet again one day. Is it today?" Little Rascal also smiled. Of course. Most importantly, Ding Meng has completed the construction of the 10th origin. He has completely grasped the information of the K virus. "Ding Meng, come out quickly." At this time, Ding Meng finally exited the primary consciousness space and slowly opened his eyes. The temple had returned to normal. All the strong light had faded away. The singularity was standing respectfully at the side. In front of it, there was a mirror image of a human standing. Ding Ming almost immediately recognized that this mirror image was the same one that Little Rascal's spiritual imprint had enveloped him at the end of the fierce battle with the droplet on S expedition. However, this time, it was not gray and hazy. The mirror image had changed a lot. First of all, he could confirm that this was the physical characteristics of a woman. She was not tall, and her body exuded a strange wave similar to an electromagnetic field. Unfortunately, her face was still very blurry. Her whole body was also in the form of light and shadow. The light and shadow suddenly spoke. "Ding Ming, I'm here." Ding Ming was shocked. Then, he exclaimed in surprise, "Little Rascal, how did you become like this?" Little Rascal smiled and said, "I've already absorbed all of the divine light here and evolved from a sealed state to a spirit state. At the same time, I've also evolved to a half-spirit state, so I don't need to rely on you anymore." Ding Ming scanned his body and saw that the pearl mark on his forehead had indeed disappeared. Little Rascal had truly been reborn. But after giving it some thought, Ding Ming realized how scary Little Rascal was. Most of the temple's energy had been absorbed by Little Rascal. Only a small portion of the temple's energy could be used by Ding Ming. That small portion was enough for him to construct the 10th origin, while most of the energy could only restore Little Rascal to a half-spirit state. What kind of terrifying existence was Little Rascal in its complete Mal-planet form? Little Rascal seemed to know what he was thinking and replied with a smile, "Ding Ming, I'm already very satisfied that I've recovered to this state. It's almost impossible for me to recover to a true Mal-planet form, so it's all up to you. In fact, the cultivation methods and battle techniques in the memory of the K-virus that you're cultivating were all once owned by me. I just secretly passed them on to you without your knowledge. In other words, the current you is the me of Ellie." Ding Ming hesitated. "You're Dr. Harksini's granddaughter?" Little Rascal nodded. "There's a reason for all of this. Dr. Harksini has devoted his entire life to biological research, and he's the leading authority on biology in the Holy Grail Federation. Even in our glorious Mal-planet civilization, his accomplishments are still quite good. Unfortunately, his granddaughter, Ellie, was born with an extremely rare terminal illness. She only has a lifespan of 10 years. This terminal illness is a mutation from a medical perspective, and it can only be treated with blood blue coral." Ding Ming nodded. He had learned about this precious spirit item from the Divine Light Singularity on Madison. It was very difficult for it to fuse with high-grade life forms, but the success rate for it to fuse with low-grade life forms was very high. Of course, this success rate was relative. Even a human success rate was less than 10%. Little Rascal said, "Ever since Ellie was born, Dr. Harksini has been researching in this area. He needs 2 conditions in order to completely cure Ellie. One of the conditions is genetic fusion technology. In fact, the mature technology was developed in the 4th year, but Dr. Harksini has never announced it to the public, not even to his student, Xiaoji. He was worried that it would cause unnecessary trouble." Ding Ming could naturally understand this. Genetic fusion technology research had always been very controversial in the Federation, and the slightest carelessness could easily lead to public opinion. Little Rascal continued, "The other condition is blood blue coral. This thing is extremely rare in the Federation star field, and it has to be found in outer space. However, Dr. Harksini doesn't have the financial resources to travel to outer space." Ding Ming hesitated. "Haitian Group approach him?" Little Rascal nodded. "It's not just Haitian Group. There's a huge chain of interest behind Chu Mingfeng. They've been coveting Dr. Harksini's genetic technology for a long time, and they've long wanted to take it for themselves. However, Dr. Harksini knew that the results of his research couldn't be revealed casually. If it fell into the hands of greedy people, the consequences would be unimaginable. However, Dr. Harksini still reached an agreement with Haitian Group for Ellie's sake and accepted their assistance. All of this happened 200 years ago." Ding Ming pondered and said, 200 years ago, Chu Mingliang was still just a young man. What's his relationship with Chu Mingfeng?" Little Rascal said, Chu Mingfeng and Chu Mingliang are from the same generation, but Chu Mingfeng is the most outstanding member of his generation in the Chu family. He stepped into the ranks of combat masters at the age of 50. In fact, he's also been searching for blood blue coral to break through to champion. Ding Ming said, "I'm afraid Dr. Harksini found it before him, right? When Dr. Harksini found blood blue coral, he also found me. He brought me back to the Kuan Peng battleship. In the human world, he's probably the first person to come into contact with Xinguang technology." Little Rascal suddenly sighed. But by the time I returned to the battleship, Ellie had already passed away. Ding Ming was stunned. The timeline was brought forward? Little Rascal nodded and said, "Yes. It was originally estimated to take 10 years, but Ellie died of an illness in the 7th year. Dr. Harksini wasn't willing to accept this outcome at all, so he kept Ellie's body in cold storage, determined to revive her." Ding Ming understood. Dr. Harksini had placed his hopes on Little Rascal. He was trying to inject a Mao Xing spirit body into a human body. Little Rascal sighed and said, "Actually, Dr. Harksini isn't as cruel and heartless as everyone thinks. On the contrary, he's a very nice person. He also took good care of me. I was also willing to agree to his request because I also hoped to have a body to be reborn in. The human body is a little weak, but it's still stronger than a spirit body." She paused for a moment and then said, "There's also another reason that forced Dr. Harksini to do this, and that's his agreement with Haitian Group. Haitian Group would only fully trust Dr. Harksini's technology if they saw the appearance of a super genetic warrior. So when I woke up, Chu Mingfeng tried to make a move on Dr. Harksini. Ding Ming also saw what happened after that. After Little Rascal woke up, she immediately wiped out all of the Haitian Group's personnel on the Kuan Peng battleship. Xiao AI explained Dr. Harksini had originally planned to use it to make medicine, but after Ellie died, Dr. Harksini also sensed the danger. He simply modified it into the K virus and secretly stored it in the battleship's energy storage. His goal was to prevent a situation like that from happening again. After all, Little Rascal isn't human. Dr. Harksini couldn't let her fall into the hands of someone like Chu Mingfeng. Ding Ming was silent. Then he said, "There's something I'm curious about. When the patrol fleet saw the battleship crash into the Dead Silent Star, why didn't they chase after it? Could it be that they knew that the battleship was loaded with the K virus and that anyone who went after would die?" "Impossible," Little Rascal flatly denied. "The only people who know the secret of the K virus are Dr. Harksini, me, and Xiao AI. Before the K virus was activated, Dr. Harksini was already dead. After the K virus was activated, I was sealed inside a biochip by Xiao AI. It wasn't until 200 years later that a gene body broke into the battleship's experimental hull. The system automatically activated, and the K virus restarted the fusion experiment. And that person was you, Ding Ming." Ding Ming suddenly raised his wrist. "Little Rascal, do you remember that Chu Mingfeng you killed? The weapon you used was this wrist guard. If everyone on the battleship died at the time, then the divine light wrist guard you used after that should have been left on the battleship. But why is it gone?" The face of the hologram suddenly distorted and blurred. Little Rascal's voice also changed. "Ding Ming, you're saying that there were still people alive after the battleship crashed? Not only did this person take away the divine light wrist guard, and they even left the Dead Silent Star?" Ding Ming sighed. "Other than that, I really can't think of any other possibility." Little Rascal said, "But even if someone took it away, it's useless because without our Mao Xing civilization's orders, that person can't use it. Besides, to use the divine light weapon, one must refine the divine light energy source. Does the Holy Grail Federation have someone like that?" Ding Ming lowered his head and pondered. "Little Rascal, I remember you once told me that Dr. Harksini had 2 major inventions. One was the K virus, and the other was the Holy Temple map. What exactly is that Holy Temple map?" Little Rascal also pondered for a long time before sighing. "Ding Ming, it's not that I don't want to tell you, but that Holy Temple map is related to a major secret of our Mao Xing civilization. With your current strength, you don't have the qualifications to know its details. If I really tell you, I'm afraid that it will affect your temperament and will, which will then affect your future cultivation. It will be very disadvantageous for you. The only thing I can tell you right now is that the Holy Temple map is actually not the doctor's invention, but belongs to our Mao Xing civilization. The doctor has come into contact with it before, or else he wouldn't have brought me back to the Kuin Peng battleship from the depths of space. Ding Ming said, "All right, I'm giving you this example because I want to remind you. Do you remember that time in Flying Star City when the Marshal and I sneaked into the warehouse of the Celestial Wolf Corps? In their warehouse safe, we found number 05 of the Holy Temple map locked in their luxury goods. Maybe this Holy Temple map isn't the Mao Xing civilization's Holy Temple map, but later we met Chu Ming Liang. How did he know about the Holy Temple map? It can't be that water droplet told him about it, right?" Little Rascal's expression finally changed. Ding Ming, it seems like your analysis is correct. There really was someone who didn't really die back then. Not only did that person take away my weapon, he also escaped. Chapter 503. Ding Ming suddenly fell silent. After a long while, he said, "Little Rascal, what do you think of that weapon of yours?" Little Rascal said, "If the wrist guard on your wrist is an energy pistol, then my weapon is the particle laser cannon on the starship." Ding Ming was speechless. If the person who escaped had really mastered the divine light weapon and lived for more than 200 years, then no matter how mediocre his aptitude was, he would have become a colossus that could not be ignored today. Little Rascal said, "Ding Ming, you've successfully constructed the 10th origin. Our memory bank's level 7 access has been unlocked. I could check the name list of all the people on the Kuin Peng starship back then." Xiao AI immediately said, "It's useless. Although you can check the name list, whether these people are alive or dead, you'll only know who they are by comparing them to the current population records of the Federation. Moreover, many people boarded the starship illegally. If they really returned to the Federation, it's very likely that they would have changed their names. Forget it." Ding Ming decisively waved his hand. "Now is not the time to discuss this. How long did it take me to construct the 10th origin?" Xiao AI's tone immediately turned serious. "According to my calculations, it took you a total of 345 days, 21 hours, and 45 minutes to construct it. This..." Ding Ming was a little dumbfounded. Even with the support of such a powerful divine light technology, it took almost a year to construct the 10th origin. Xiao AI said, "That's considered fast. If you had constructed it yourself, it would have taken you at least 1,000 years. Ding Ming was once again speechless. However, it was understandable. He cultivated the Mao Xing cultivation method, which was a high-level thing. It was an existence that the cultivation methods of the Federal Empire could only look up to. Xiao AI said, "Don't be too happy just yet. Your foundational cultivation method hasn't been completely completed yet." "It hasn't been completed yet?" Ding Ming's eyes widened. A 10-star foundational cultivation method was a legend among legends. How could it not be completed yet? Little Rascal suddenly laughed. "That's right. There's still an 11th origin waiting for you. Are you surprised? Are you surprised?" Ding Ming's eyelids drooped. It was impossible for him to be surprised. An 11-star basic cultivation method. He really couldn't imagine what kind of heaven-defying existence it was. Could it be that it required tens of thousands of years to cultivate? He suddenly thought of something and immediately said, "By the way, I've been cultivating in this temple for a year. Where are Junling and the others?" Only then did the singularities say, "There's no need to worry. The passage of time outside is much slower than inside. Only a few hours have passed in the mind domain, but only 110 hours have passed outside the planet." As he explained, he swiped his hand, and the images of Junling, Lu Qing, and the others appeared. These people were still fighting, and their bodies were covered in wounds. It seemed that their injuries were not light. Little Rascal decisively ordered, "Remove their illusions and teleport them to the Crystal Plaza for treatment." The oddity bowed respectfully. "Yes, sir." Little Rascal said unhappily, "I don't really like that title." The oddity replied, Understood. Ding Meng was a little curious. This oddity claimed to be able to control the rainbow system, but he respectfully addressed Little Rascal as Sir. Little Rascal seemed to have a great background. However, the oddity revealed a serious expression at this moment. Sir, there's a situation that I must explain to you. Little Rascal said, Speak. The oddity said, You've absorbed almost all of the energy here. What's worth congratulating you on is that you've recovered quite a bit. However, all of the defense arrays have lost their effectiveness. There are many starships from different civilizations in the sky above our heads. For safety reasons, this place must be destroyed. Little Rascal pondered and didn't answer. Ding Meng was curious. Why? Xiao AI explained, the unique phenomenon of the rainbow system is caused by this planet. Strictly speaking, this planet is a defense system built by the mighty power of this divine light starship. Now that the energy has been exhausted, the secrets here will be discovered by the other civilizations sooner or later. Ding Meng said, the secret of the Mao Xing civilization can't be discovered by the God War Starfield. Little Rascal shook his head. No, the God War Starfield, the Holy Grail Federation, the Norse Empire, the Steel Main Empire, the Frogmen, and the Devourer Realm are all no threat to the Divine Light Starship. Even if the starship has no energy left, it's still not something they can shake. Ding Meng said, Then what do you mean? Little Rascal sighed. What I mean is that the inside of this planet's core cannot be known by outsiders. Ding Meng was puzzled. I still don't understand. Little Rascal sighed even harder. Ding Meng, can you imagine how terrifying the enemies who destroyed our Mao Xing civilization are? How heaven-defying are their methods? Ding Meng immediately reacted. He looked at the 2 rows of soldiers in the hall and said, That's why you guys underwent dimensional reduction and hid in the 3-dimensional starfield. It's because this place is so remote that they might not be able to discover it. Little Rascal said, They might not be able to discover it, but that doesn't mean they haven't thought of it. Ding Meng's brows furrowed. You're saying that the enemy has also undergone dimensional reduction modifications and entered this star region to track you down? The Singularity sighed. Our enemy is a higher-level life form. According to the laws of the universe, they can't enter the 3-dimensional starfield. Of course, this doesn't mean that they can't really enter. If they force their way in, it will lead to the destruction of this starfield. In terms of balance, they've destroyed the order of the universe and caused unpredictable consequences. This time, Ding Meng understood. Although they can't come here, they haven't given up on tracking us. They're using other methods to search for us because their goal is the map of the Holy Sanctum. The Singularity said, That's pretty much it. Ding Meng said, Then how will they proceed? Little Rascal's tone also became serious. The human way. Ding Meng was stunned. The human way? Little Rascal said, Right now, there are as many as 100 starships in the sky above us. There might be their people among them. Once they come into contact with this place, they'll transmit all valuable information back. Once the enemy determines the precise coordinates, they won't let us go. Furthermore, we won't have anywhere to hide. Ding Meng said, Could it be that these enemies can also control humans? Little Rascal said, There are many ways. They can control, parasitize, attach, or even directly invade through telepathic thoughts. In short, if you don't have true multidimensional vision and divine light technology, you won't be able to identify them at all. However, now is not the time for you to study this. What you need to do is to use your divine light weapons well to eliminate these people or escape as far away as possible from this place. You can't let them know of our existence. Ding Meng pondered for a moment and said, I'm almost certain that there are enemies of yours among the families up there. This time, it was Little Rascal's turn to be surprised. You that sure? Ding Meng asked. How was this place discovered? He was asking about the Singularity. The Singularity quickly explained, Every 5 years, the Divine Light Starship's defense array is reconfigured. It's like the rays, water droplets, craters, tunnels, and so on that you saw when you landed. These are all carefully designed. We use the energy of the 7 blazing suns to set them up to prevent outsiders from entering. However, the starship has been here for more than 10,000 years, and the system hasn't received any technical maintenance, so there are some problems with its operation. The last time it was set up, there was a short period of vacuum, which caused the energy fluctuations of divine light technology to be released. Ding-Meng nodded. It was just that short period of time, but the radar of the Water Sakura Association starship captured it. If even we humans can detect the abnormality in this place, there's no reason why your enemies can't. Therefore, I'm certain that the enemy has also infiltrated the people up there. Little Rascal gave him a look of praise. No matter what, Ding-Meng always remained objective and calm. He never underestimated himself, but he never underestimated his enemies either. This was one of the outstanding aspects of Ding-Meng. Ding-Meng asked again, "Then how are we going to destroy this place?" The Singularity replied, "The energy has been exhausted. I plan to collapse the rainbow system into a wormhole and open a space-time tunnel to perform a space jump, sending everything here to the depths of the endless sea of stars. They won't be able to find any clues at all. Therefore, you and my lord should prepare to evacuate. I can only give you 24 hours to evacuate." Little Rascal said, "Ding-Meng, part of the Sanctum's map is also hidden here. They are number 02, number 04, and number 08. You have number 05 and number 09 on you. So for safety reasons, I can't appear in my half-spirit form and continue to fuse with the biochip in your body." Ding-Meng nodded. "All right." As soon as he said that, Little Rascal turned into a tiny stream of light and entered Ding-Meng's forehead, quickly disappearing into Ding-Meng's body. At this moment, Ding-Meng's vision changed again. Everything in front of his eyes turned into lines, taking the form of strings. Moreover, his vision was black and white. It felt like he was walking in the opposite direction of countless hurricanes. Little Rascal explained, "This is true multidimensional vision. Because the universe itself is made up of strings, this vision is relatively primitive. However, it can effectively detect different enemies that appear in time and space and identify them one by one. Simply put, this is the vision of a quantum radar, making it impossible for any enemy to hide. However, considering how weak you are right now, you're probably still not used to this." Ding-Meng said in surprise, "I'm still very weak right now." Xiao AI sighed. "By human standards, you can indeed be considered an expert. You can stand on equal footing with warlords and saints. However, for the Mao Xing civilization, you're at most an ordinary soldier. The road ahead of you is still very long. Just look at this Mao Xing general who underwent dimensional reduction 10,000 years ago. You can't even resist the residual aura on his clothes. Tell me, aren't you still very weak right now?" Ding-Meng took a deep breath. "I understand. Then let's evacuate immediately." Chapter 504. At the same time, in addition to the Supremacy, the Sturgeon, and the Empire's fleet, 3 more fleets appeared. They were the Holy Grail Federation, the Steel Main Empire, and the Devourer World. At this moment, the 6 fleets surrounded the asteroid from different directions. Among them, the Holy Grail Federation's fleet was the most eye-catching. It was a fleet group, and the leading ship was the Golden Dragon mothership. It looked like a giant dragon flying in space, majestic and magnificent. The mothership was surrounded by 23 large and small starships, and there were hundreds of other starships shuttling back and forth. It was like an interstellar legion, and even the Empire's fleet couldn't compare with it. Compared to the spectacular Federation's fleet, the other 2 fleets were much more shabby. The Steel Main Empire starship was like a huge black disk floating in the sky. It was dark all over, and it was hard to see its appearance. The Devourer World starship wasn't a real starship. It looked like an ostrich, but it had a pair of dark blue wings on both sides. It had a large number of tentacles and claws. That's right, this was a real giant alien beast that could travel in space. It was more powerful than human starships because this void spirit ray was not affected by space storms when passing through wormholes. This was the Devourer World's most prided space-time weapon. It often took a lot of resources and centuries to cultivate a void spirit ray. Now, These 6 fleets were standing in 6 different directions of the asteroid, and there was a strong hostility between them. Objectively speaking, it had been 5 days, and these 6 fleets hadn't fought yet, which was already a miracle. On the Supremacy, a small venue was simulated in the center of the hall. The remote real-time projection was being generated, and it could be clearly seen that the 6 podiums were combining into images. The God Wars Starfield's image was naturally Shiwen. The Empire's image was still the young and beautiful female officer. The Frogman Kingdom's image was still the Frog Commander Dennett. The Steelmane Empire's image was a tall savage covered with thick hair, and the Devourer World's image was a swallowing monster covered in mucus. The Holy Grail Federation's image was the last one to be generated. It was a beautiful woman with a cold temperament. She was wearing a professional dress and a pair of low-light glasses, and she looked quite arrogant. I'm very happy to be able to meet all of you in such a distant star field. The beauty was the first to speak. I don't think we should be enemies. I'm afraid this is the first time in the history of our respective races that we are able to gather here to discuss matters. This opening remark was quite pertinent. Now that the situation was complicated, no family would want to have a conflict with others. The female officer of the Empire immediately replied with a smile. The Empire and the Federation have always been friendly and peaceful, seeking common ground while reserving differences. I fully agree with this young lady's words. This was a very tactful way of expressing her position. The beauty nodded slightly at the female officer and then raised her chin. Everyone, please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Su Yaluen, and I'm from the Holy Grail Federation's Shenghao group. Her self-introduction was short, but it contained a lot of information. The Shenghao group was one of the top financial groups in the Federation. In other words, the huge interstellar fleet they were facing was not from the Federation military. This would undoubtedly save them a lot of trouble. The representative of the devouring sector immediately began to squeak. Why didn't you say so earlier? Su Yaluen said expressionlessly. Elder Changzhong, I'm very sorry. Previously, you didn't send out an effective signal in space, which caused us to exchange fire and cause some losses to your alien beasts. After this, we will give you a certain amount of compensation. Changzhong licked his lips that were covered in mucus. He seemed to want to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. The Shenghao group wanted to give a certain amount of compensation. The word compensation was completely negligible. A certain amount was the key. The question was that possible? However, when he saw the densely packed battleships of the Shenghao group in the sky, Changzhong couldn't bring himself to object. Su Yaluen's aura was extremely strong. She managed to settle 2 families in one go. Therefore, when her cold eyes fell on the representative of the Steelmane Empire, the savage had no choice but to speak. You hairless monkeys, what do you want? Su Yaluen said proudly. Sir, with all due respect, your army's combat power is really not that great. In fact, in terms of individual strength, the Steelmane Empire was far stronger than humans. Steelmane soldiers were well-trained and were very powerful in groups. However, it was different in space. The Steelmane Empire's starship technology was always backward. It was unwise to fight them head-on. To put it bluntly, Su Yaluen was using the strength of her fleet to pressure him. However, the savage commander was obviously not convinced. Whether our combat power is great or not, we will know after a battle. Su Yaluen sneered. Are you sure you want to try? The savage was about to say something, but he couldn't say it. He could only change his words. Miss Su, do you mean to join forces? He was obviously scared. Su Yaluen looked at Dennett again. The Federation and the Frogman Kingdom have always stayed out of each other's business. I hope this commander can see the situation clearly. Dennett was obviously not scared. He immediately expressed his attitude. Sorry, I refuse to join forces. Su Yaluen's face suddenly darkened. Oh, Dennett said again, but I will not participate in your search, nor will I interfere with your operation. I will just watch. It had been 5 days since the Frogman Kingdom's seeding machine had been planted and had basically been wiped clean. Not even a strand of hair had been found. So when Dennett said that he wouldn't interfere with everyone's operation, he was actually showing weakness. To be honest, if they really fought, their Sturgeon starship could barely bully the Blackboard starship of the Steel Main Empire. The other families could easily take care of them. Su Yaluan then slowly turned her gaze to Shiwen. Her intuition told her that this elegant beauty in front of her was not someone easy to deal with. Most importantly, the God War starfield was also a human world. The frogmen, savages, and devouring monsters were easy to deal with, but humans were the most difficult to deal with. As expected, Shiwen said coldly, "I refuse to join forces too." Su Yaluan asked coldly, "Why?" Shiwen sneered. "Miss Su, I don't know what you have that is worthy of my alliance." Su Yaluan said, "It seems that Officer Shiwen is deliberately going against everyone." Shiwen sneered even more. "If you think I'm going against everyone, then I'm going against everyone. You can interpret it however you want." She still had a clearer view of the situation. This so-called alliance was definitely not a real alliance. It existed only to prevent everyone from fighting for a short period of time. However, if you wanted someone to attack someone else, it was almost impossible. Now, everyone was thinking, "You guys can fight as much as you want, I'll hide far away. The fiercer you guys fight, the better. In the end, I'll come and pick up the ready-made spoils." Su Yaluan took a deep breath and stared at Shiwen. She did not speak, but her eyes were already very cold. It was obvious that she was restraining herself. At this moment, Catherine suddenly turned her head. The ground shield seems to have been removed. President Liu and the others have a signal. On the screen, the green signal representing Ding Ming and the others had already appeared on the map. It was flickering. Katika said, "Can the teleportation portal be used?" Catherine nodded affirmatively. "It's no problem," Dong Yi said. "Then send them back and see what they've discovered." Short-range teleportation was naturally very easy to achieve. However, it was completely impossible for Paragon to avoid the radars of the other families. Therefore, before Ding Ming and the others were teleported back to the command center, Su Yaluan finally spoke. "Officer Shi, I request to board the ship alone to have a chat with you guys." This request isn't too much, right? Boarding the ship alone would definitely be a short-range teleportation, but it had a condition. The connection request could not be connected without Paragon's permission, unless a hacker destroyed the mainframe system and forcibly connected. Of course, doing so would undoubtedly be suicidal. Su Yaluan's request to come alone was a bit of a headache for Shiwen. The other party's combat strength was obvious. If they were serious, Paragon might not be destroyed, but it would be impossible for them to defeat the Federation's fleet. "What if I refuse?" Shiwen asked tentatively. Su Yaluan's gaze was as sharp as a knife. "Then we will definitely use force, I promise." Shiwen took a deep breath. "Okay, you can board the ship alone." The alloy door of the command center automatically opened, and Ding Ming and the others slowly walked in. At the same time, a teleportation beam appeared in the center of the command center, and Su Yaluan was teleported over. After Su Yaluan's real body appeared, there wasn't any energy fluctuation from her body. However, no one present would be foolish enough to think that she was an ordinary person. She was definitely an extremely powerful origin ability user. Even her aura wasn't leaked out. Seeing Ding Ming and the others return, Ming Huaji couldn't help but ask, "What's the situation down there?" Before returning, Ding Ming had already thought of what to say. Seeing that there was an additional stranger in the command center, Ding Ming replied without hesitation, "We can leave now." "Oh." Dong Yi and the others were surprised. "Why? Is there no movement down there?" "There is," Ding Ming answered decisively. "But the movement down there is not something we can handle." Shiwen couldn't help but ask, "What exactly is down there?" Ding Ming said word by word, "There are ruins of an extraterrestrial civilization down there. Its strength is not something a first-class civilization like us can withstand." This was the truth, but Ding Ming still mustered up his courage to take a gamble. He was betting that this group of people in front of him would never believe his words. The more they didn't believe him, the more they wanted to go down and take a look. Now that the collapse of Xinguang biotechnology had begun, whoever went down would die. None of them would be able to escape. Chapter 505. Su Yaowen didn't say anything. She just looked at everyone quietly, but in fact, her low-light glasses were secretly scanning the people in front of her. Their physical characteristics, identity information, origin energy fluctuations, and all other useful data were recorded. However, she didn't dare to send this information back to the mothership on the Supreme Starship. Once she did, she would be exposed, so she had to wait and see. Ding Ming, Lu Qing, Jun Ling, and the others had already established a mental link. It only took them about 10 seconds to figure out the current situation. Su Yaowen? Ding Ming frowned. Why does this name sound so familiar? Little Rascal immediately said, Ding Ming, have you forgotten? In the safe of the Celestial Wolf Corps' energy warehouse in Meteor City, there was a piece of jewelry that belonged to Su Yaowen. I wonder if it's the same person? Ding Ming immediately remembered that the map 05 of the Holy Sanctum was also found there. Could there be a connection between the two? At this time, Su Yaowen seemed to have noticed that Ding Ming was secretly observing her. She felt very uncomfortable, so she immediately bowed slightly to Shiwen. Officer Shi, thank you very much. I won't disturb you any longer. Goodbye. The beam of light appeared again, and she was quickly sent back to the mothership by curved shadow transfer. It was only after she left that Ming Huaji dared to speak. Is it really an alien ruin? Yes, Ding Ming replied expressionlessly. Ming Huaji immediately turned to Dong Yi, his expression rather excited. Should we send a probe ship down there? It's best not to go. Ding Ming explained calmly. I just said that it's not something a first-class civilization like us can control. Sheng Tianming jumped out. What makes you think we can't? Ding Ming was too lazy to explain. It's up to you to believe it or not. It's also up to you to decide whether to go or not. We must go. Ming Huaji immediately raised his hand. The Alliance spent so much money and used so many resources. It took decades just to build this starship. If we return empty-handed, we won't be able to answer to the higher-ups. Sheng Tianming quickly agreed. Yes, since it is an alien ruin, there must be alien technology. Once we master it, the Alliance will become even stronger. Since the two of them had expressed their stance, it meant that the Holy War Army and Qian Huanyu's family had agreed to it. Boji also jumped out. I also think we can go down. After all, it wasn't easy for us to come here. It's reasonable for us to get to the bottom of this. Let's not talk about other things, but we must find a new energy source. This was the opinion of the Blue Light Group. In fact, the Holy War Army and the Blue Light Group had already expressed their opinions. However, this was the supreme title. The final action still depended on the attitude of Shi Wan and Dong Yi. Kataga silently stared at Ding Ming. I think we'd better listen to Brother Ding's opinion. He and Ding Ming had survived from the Azure Tree planet together. He dare not say that he knew Ding Ming very well, but he knew that Ding Ming had survived many crises. At the very least, Ding Ming's understanding of danger was far deeper than anyone else present. Now that Ding Ming suggested leaving, Kataga believed that Ding Ming's choice must be reasonable. However, after Kataga spoke, it was Dong Yi's turn to be surprised. He knew that Kataga was steady and meticulous. There might be a deeper reason for him to give up at this juncture. President Shi, you are the commander of this operation. You should make the decision. Dong Yi threw this thorny problem to Shiwen. Shiwen slowly walked forward. Her eyes were looking at Lu Qing. The reason was very simple. Lu Qing went down with Ding Ming and the others, so she naturally knew the situation below. However, what she did not know was that Lu Qing, Jun Ling, and the others had been trapped in the illusion of the brain domain. In the end, they only saw the magic of the crystal square and did not come into contact with the core temple at all. They knew nothing about the secrets of the Mao Xing civilization. Ding Ming could not tell them about the bad things, so Lu Qing's expression was very confused. Shiwen pondered for a moment before slowly turning his gaze back to Ding Ming. Give me a reason to leave. If you can convince me, we'll retreat right now. If you can't convince me, we'll send out our scouting ships. After all, we have an advantage over the other families. We've reached the surface before them. I don't have any reason to persuade you. Ding Meng sighed deeply. If you really want me to say it, I can give you a multiple choice question. The question is very simple. Do you want money or do you want her life? Shi Wen's face darkened and did not answer. Even an idiot would know how to choose this kind of multiple choice question, not to mention that she was a statistician. There were some reasons that did not need to be explained too clearly. The most glorious time for an adventurer was when they made the right bet after going through untold hardships and finally found the treasure. However, too many people could not see the risks that adventurers faced. Once they went in the wrong direction, they would be doomed eternally. Ding Ming also seemed to feel that his words were too weak. He turned to Catherine, who was beside the main control console. The defense system of this planet has been removed. You can test its gravity. Catherine immediately lowered her head and operated. A few seconds later, her voice changed. The gravity of this asteroid is increasing. The value is almost doubling. The rate of increase is once every 5 minutes on average. Ding Ming looked at Shi Wen. We have 24 hours to evacuate. My estimate is 12 hours. You're a data master. You should be able to calculate the result. Shi Wen still did not answer. She was deep in thought. At the same time, in the command hall of the Gold Dragon ship, Su Yaluan's low-light glasses shot out beams of light, outlining a screen above the main control console. The screen displayed the information of the people on Sovereign. Su Yaluan explained, "These people are from a place called the Gods' Warzone Starfield. They are all unfamiliar faces. From the aura I sense, these people are not very strong." She was explaining to a person in the lounge behind the main control console. This person was extremely burly and tall. He was the commander of the Shenghao Organization's operation, Guyu. He was a fierce general under the Shenghao Organization. Not only was he very strong, but he was also good at commanding fleets for interstellar voyages. Guyu was sitting on the sofa. He was extremely confident in the current situation. Regardless of whether it was the size of the fleet, the strength of the personnel, the resources, or the allocation of weapons, Shenghao's side was completely superior to the other 5 parties. Therefore, his expression was very relaxed. He even had the mood to leisurely pour himself a small glass of red wine and light a cigar to smoke happily. He was satisfied with Su Yaluan's explanation. Although the Gods' Warzone Starfield starship had arrived earlier than them, a single starship could not pose a threat to them. However, as Su Yaluan's glasses continued to generate new screens, Guyu suddenly stood up. "Wait," Su Yaluan asked curiously. "Officer Gu, what's the situation?" Guyu's expression was serious. Rewind the image of that person. Su Yaluan could only do as she was told. This person is a staff member they teleported back from the surface. He should be one of the explorers. He was the one who suggested that there are alien ruins below. He is definitely not an explorer. Guyu looked at the person on the screen and quietly interrupted her. "I remember this person." "Oh." Su Yaluan was surprised. "Officer, do you know him?" Guyu didn't answer. He just walked to the main control panel and operated it himself. Not long after, another screen appeared. This was the information extracted from Shenghao's internal database. The images displayed on it were exactly the same as the images collected by Su Yaluan. Su Yaluan was finally shocked. This is clearly the same person. Could he be from our Holy Grail Federation? Guyu's face darkened. This person is called Ding Ming. Initially, he was one of the people the public relations department wanted to rope in. I saw his name on the list before, and I have a deep impression of him. Someone who could be included in the eyes of an expert like Guyu was definitely not a simple person. Su Yaluan could not help but say, "But he looks too young. I roughly estimate that he is not even 30 years old." Guyu kept staring at Ding Ming on the screen. "It is because he is young that the higher-ups have been trying to recruit him." Su Yaluan hesitated. "Is there anything special about this person?" Guyu said, "I have seen his profile. This person was born in the refugee camp on Planet Bramble. Later, he committed himself to the Green Arrow Corps and single-handedly turned the Meteor City upside down." Su Yaluan frowned. "Isn't it just the Celestial Wolf Corps of Yin Fengwei? It is just a small mercenary corps." Guyu said, "The problem is that according to the data, Ding Ming was only 21 years old at that time. but he was a beginner wore venerable. A 21-year-old beginner wore venerable. Su Yaluan's expression became thoughtful. Guyu said, later, Lu Ming and his group of people were also killed by him single-handedly. The most important thing was that the precious materials that our group was determined to obtain were snatched away by the Starbao group. It was also because of him. Su Yaluan then paid attention. So, he is still a young talent? Guyu's face was very gloomy. Before the Hercules armor was tested, the last test product was also on planet Cyprus. The data did not say the result, but the tester and the armor were all destroyed. I estimate that he was the one who did it. Su Yaluan said in horror. If he can kill an origin ability user who was equipped with a Hercules armor, he should at least be a combat master, right? Why didn't we recruit such a talent? What are those people in the public relations department doing? Guyu was expressionless. Later, he entered the Federation and went to Star Splendor University on planet Blue Moon. He passed the Star Splendor examination with first place in the comprehensive examination. Su Yaluan was speechless. After entering Star Splendor University, Ding Ming was naturally in the pocket of the Starbao group. In order to recruit this person, the Ling family must have spent a lot of money, right? Su Yaluan asked. Guyu continued, but according to the data, this Ding Ming participated in the military operation to quell the rebellion of the Linda faction. It was said that it was a top-secret operation. Later, there was a disaster in outer space. The official explanation given was that Ding Ming had died in the disaster. The Starbao group held a mourning ceremony after the incident, and our group even sent a representative to attend. All of this happened 3 years ago. Su Yaluan also turned to look at Ding Ming on the screen. So, not only did this Ding Ming not die, but he also survived and went to the God's War Zone Star Zone. Guyu's eyes flashed coldly. But this is not the most important point. In the Star Splendor examination 3 years ago, according to the known information we obtained, Ding Ming was promoted from an advanced war venerable to an intermediate war master in just 1 year. Hearing this, even if Su Yaluan's mental fortitude was good, she still felt a chill run down her spine. Chapter 506. An ordinary human, and a refugee at that, had actually managed to become an intermediate combat master in the short span of a year. This was no longer as simple as a genius. This was practically the speed of a god. Su Yaluan said in shock, Officer Gu, are you saying that this person is hiding important secrets? Only then did Guyu's expression return to normal. He muttered with a sigh, this is still secondary. Now that more than 3 years have passed, this Ding Ming is at most 25 years old. What level do you think he is? Su Yaluan frowned. I can't imagine it. According to the information provided by the database, this person is probably already at the champion level. Guyu asked, you just boarded their starship. How is your perception of this person? Su Yaluan turned pale with fright. There is no trace of origin energy on his body at all. Could it be that he's already? Guyu nodded with a heavy expression. That's right. His strength has already broken through the champion level, and it's the extremely terrifying kind. Su Yaluan sighed. What a pity. This kind of genius can't be used by our Shenghao Corporation. Choosing the Starbao Corporation will probably be his lifelong regret. Guyu ignored this topic and asked in return, just now on the starship, he said that there are alien ruins down there, and he even suggested that we return immediately? Su Yaluan nodded and said, that's right, but I think he's definitely lying. This place is already a target for all. How could he possibly return empty-handed after entering a treasure mountain? Guyu didn't say anything else and just paced back and forth with his hands behind his back. Su Yaluan was very familiar with this habit. When an officer was caught in a dilemma, it was best not to make a sound to avoid affecting his train of thought. After a long time, Guyu finally stopped walking. He raised his head and let out a long sigh. As expected, those who have cultivated to the champion level are all shrewd people. Su Yaluan asked respectfully, please enlighten me, Officer Gu. Guyu sighed and said, I'm only worried about one thing right now. I'm afraid that that guy's telling the truth, but none of you will believe him. Su Yaluan frowned and said, but when they were teleported back, they didn't have any redundant items on them. They must have returned empty-handed. Guyu said, "You only saw the surface. In the depths of space, most of the time, what the eyes see isn't the truth." Su Yaluan was confused again. She still could not understand why an expert like Guyu would place such importance on Dingming. At this time, the staff of the detection zone said, "Officer Gu, the starship of the God War Starfield is moving. My initial guess is that they're leaving this galaxy." Oh. Guyu and Su Yaluan turned their heads at the same time, only to see on the hologram that the Sovereign's thrusters were spewing out crystal flames and were slowly turning around. It seemed that they were preparing to retreat. Su Yaluan looked at Guyu in shock. Her eyes were filled with admiration. The commander's judgment was completely correct. Dingming was indeed telling the truth. This kid was really cunning. But the question now was, should they continue to stay here, or turn around and chase after Dingming? Guyu slowly closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He had to make the most correct decision in the shortest amount of time. For a moment, the entire command hall was silent. This senior commander had never made a wrong decision. After about 30 seconds, Guyu suddenly opened his eyes. He forcefully extinguished the cigar in his hand and ordered in a deep voice, "The main force of the fleet will stay here and do not move. Continue the search according to the original plan. The all-clear composite ship will move out and chase after the starship of the God War Starfield. Intercept it and do not alert the other families." This was obviously a double insurance method. Su Yaluan said, "Officer, who do you plan to send out for this pursuit mission?" Guyu's eyes shone brightly. "I will go personally." Su Yaluan could not help but take a deep breath. This Dingming was really something. He could actually make Guyu go personally. Guyu then turned his head and ordered Little Su inform Butcher, King Kong, and Inglong to get ready to move out. Apart from Guyu, these three people were the strongest in the entire fleet. Even people at Su Yaluan's level only knew their nicknames and did not know their real names. Guyu wanted to bring his direct subordinates to go. It was obvious that he wanted to meet Dingming. Even if the starship of the God War Starfield managed to escape, he had to make sure that Dingming stayed. If this kind of person was allowed to return to the Holy Grail Federation, it would undoubtedly cultivate a future natural enemy for the Shenghao Corporation. "Move out," Guyu ordered decisively. In space, the sovereign starship was like a bird of light, speeding forward with a long tail. The command hall was silent because Ming Huaji, Sheng Tianming, and the others did not expect that Shiwen would actually listen to Dingming's suggestion and decide to return the way they came. Of course, no matter how unwilling they could not have any objections. After all, the overall commander of the operation was Shiwen. Shiwen stood by the control panel in silence. She did not really trust Dingming. She was just considering the overall situation. The fleet of the Holy Grail Federation was really too big. Even if they could find the energy source, so what? Could they bring the energy source back safely? That was simply impossible. The laws of the dark forest in the universe were not restricted by the orders of the Federation, nor were they set by the Alliance. In the depths of the sea of stars, only the strong had the right to speak. The weak were destined to be destroyed. Retreating was actually reducing the risk to the minimum. While she was still thinking, the alarm in the command hall was suddenly triggered. The frequency of the red light flashing was very high. The system finally sounded. "All crew members, all crew members, all crew members, a high-speed flying unit has been detected. A large amount of unknown energy has locked onto this starship. Danger level." Catherine immediately turned her head. "It's the starship of the Holy Grail Federation. They're following us." On the screen, a large silver-white starship was speeding in their direction. The starship was like an aircraft carrier in the sea. It was made up of two aircraft carriers stacked on top of each other, but it was at least 100 times larger than an aircraft carrier. Even Dingming had not seen such a starship when he was in the Federation. It must be the latest starship that the Shenghao Corporation had developed or bought. Judging from the murderous aura of the starship, it was obvious that they were not coming with good intentions. Sure enough, only 3 minutes later, Catherine spoke again. "President Xi, the other party is requesting a communication connection." Shiwen's expression was not good. Let them connect. A remote real-time projection was quickly generated. This time, it was Guyu's image. Guyu did not beat around the bush and went straight to the point. My colleagues, I'm Guyu, the commander of the Federation's fleet. I'm sorry to take up a few minutes of your precious time. I have an idea, and this idea is that I don't recommend that you sneak away like this, Shiwen sneered. Officer Gu, we seem to have left openly. You don't have to make such a big fuss, do you? Guyu said, I hope you can stop now. Shiwen said coldly. Reason? Guyu then turned his gaze to Dingming. The rest of you can leave safely, but this person must stay. I'll give you 5 minutes to consider. Shiwen replied almost without thinking, Sorry, I've never had the habit of taking orders. Guyu stared at her. Are you sure? Shiwen could not be bothered to say more. Turn off the communication channel. Catherine moved very quickly. Guyu's image disappeared with a click, but at the same time, everyone could not help but look at Shiwen. This was a classic example of drawing a clear line with the Shanghao Corporation. Shiwen did not panic. She turned her head and asked, What's our speed now? Catherine immediately replied, We're at the 3rd cosmic speed. Shiwen decisively ordered, Increase speed to the 5th cosmic speed. The 3rd cosmic speed allowed them to fly out of the rainbow system, but if they wanted to open a wormhole, they had to be close to the speed of light in an open space. Shiwen said again, Activate the main defense system. Catherine and Kataga were quickly tapping on the control panel. They also knew that Shiwen had rejected Guyu's threat, so this battle was inevitable. On the illumination, Guyu looked at the screen with a pale face. The staff was already explaining. Their speed has increased. It seems that they want to speed up and escape. Su Yaluan said, Using cannons and particle laser cannons in this situation is too suitable. Guyu said, Speed up and catch up. Maintain a balanced speed. Activate the neutron cannon array. Attack on my command. The steel plates on both sides of the illumination opened, and many thick black cannons were released. As soon as they were released, a strong light flashed on the Supreme. The system voice said, A large amount of high-risk energy has been detected. Lock onto the ship. Prepare for impact. Catherine immediately said, It's neutron beam energy. They have a lot of cannons. Kataga also reported, The starship is unable to dodge at its current speed. Shiwen sneered, This Guyu dares to underestimate us. Let them know the power of Supreme. At this time, Guyu's order was issued. 3, 2, 1, begin. Whoosh! All of the cannons on the illumination opened fire at the same time. 8 orange beams of neutron energy appeared in the vast space. These 8 long beams were very particular. They formed a mouth shape and then rotated towards the tail of the Supreme. The neutron beam was used to create a vibrational cutting effect, and this formation was used to destroy the exterior of the Supreme without causing any damage to the core of the ship. Guyu's intention was clear. He didn't plan to blow up the Supreme, but to force it to stop. The 8 beams of light were getting closer and closer, covering the Supreme like yellow pillars. However, the Supreme didn't turn around, nor did it activate any defensive measures. Su Yaluan was confused. Are they not reacting, or are they not afraid at all? The answer to this question was quickly obtained. When the beams of light collided with the Supreme, it was like 8 chopsticks sinking into water. Not a single bubble appeared, and it completely absorbed all the damage. Of course, it was impossible to be completely unharmed. Through the radar, it could be clearly seen that some steel slag had appeared on the outer steel plates of the starship. However, this was completely negligible to the starship as a whole. Su Yaluan was a little dumbfounded. She quickly pressed on the screen. A moment later, she raised her head in surprise. According to the calculation, this starship is made of at least 256 yuan of superalloy. It can only be higher and not lower. Chapter 507. Guyu didn't have much of a reaction. He appeared very calm because he knew that no matter how weak a starship that could fly into the Rainbow series was, it couldn't be defeated by a single shot from an ordinary weapon. Activate the ship's secondary cannons and use the railgun, Guyu ordered in a deep voice. He was obviously going to be ruthless. "Since you don't listen to me, I'll destroy you." Following his order, the thick cannon at the bottom of the bright ship was slowly released, and the energy sphere at the tip began to gather energy. The sphere was like a vortex gathering energy, and it became brighter and brighter, finally turning into a ball of light. Whoosh! A straight and bright light beam streaked across the sky and hit the tail of Supremacy like lightning. At least in the eyes of the bright ship's crew, the railgun had hit, but the scene of the starship slowly disintegrating didn't happen. Raising his head to take a closer look, he saw that the Sovereign on the screen had been enveloped by a huge energy shield at some point in time. The orbital rays hit the light shield with a sizzling sound, and the blue light on the surface flashed wildly, preventing the rays from entering. Su Yalowin was a little surprised. It wasn't that there weren't any starships that could withstand the railgun, but this Supremacy's energy shield was very strange. Under normal circumstances, the shield wouldn't change until it was shattered, but the opponent's shield was constantly twisting and changing. It was like a bubble, constantly transferring the energy of the defense to the point of contact with the railgun. Not long after, the rays began to crack and crumble. Specks of yellow energy scattered in all directions in space, as if countless stars were falling from the sky. The scene was a bit like an electric welding. The steel plate didn't melt, but the welding torch was damaged. "Increase the energy input," Guyu ordered decisively. With a whoosh, the railgun's volume increased by 3 times. It was like a super light beam burning forcefully, crushing the opponent's shield. "Reduce the average speed and activate the shield's counterattack mode." Shiwen also ordered decisively. Passively taking a beating wasn't her style. She could only fight for a bloody path with a strong counterattack. With a clang, the shield turned dark blue. It was obvious that more energy had been injected into it. Then, an even stranger scene appeared. The air bubble shield separated from the starship and not only blocked the enhanced version of the railgun, but it also flew in the opposite direction towards the bright star, forming a cannonball that repelled the bright star. Not good. The enemy's energy is extremely strong, far exceeding the size of our attack. The enemy's attack will hit us in 30 seconds. Guyu did not seem to have expected such a situation, but he reacted quickly. Stop injecting energy, activate the defensive shield, and perform emergency evasive maneuvers. The energy shield of the Albright starship also lit up in an instant. It was also a spherical energy shield. When the bubble shield hit, the Albright starship actually made a heaven-defying dodging action. The starship flew to the side in a weird path at an acute angle of 30 degrees. It could be seen that the pilots of the Shunghao group were quite skilled. Boom! A loud sound rang out. The bubble shield exploded at this moment. It was not a normal explosion, but a light curtain that stretched for tens of thousands of kilometers. This was a light curtain in the true sense of the word. A pure white light filled the starry sky. It could also be said that it was an energy wall that blocked the path of the Albright starship, preventing its powerful pursuit. The Albright starship melted into this light curtain. For a moment, the entire starship trembled violently. Many light curtains in the command hall were extinguished instantly. Many people lost their balance, and some even fell to the ground. Sheng Tianming laughed disdainfully. "Unless the entire fleet chases after us, a single starship will die. Don't you know how much effort we put into building the Supreme Starship?" He was still thinking highly of himself, and did not see that not only did Shi Wen's expression not relax, but it also became serious. In the radar image, although the energy wall was dazzling and magnificent, the Albright starship flew out very quickly. The shield must have been blown away, but the hull only suffered some minor damage. Only a few steel plates fell off. A glint appeared in Shi Wen's eyes. This guy has the capital to be arrogant. It was very clear that the Albright starship and Supreme Starship were evenly matched opponents. It was very difficult to determine the victor in a short period of time in this kind of conventional battle, and it was impossible to deal a destructive blow to the other. But we can't continue to waste time with them like this. Kartika was a little anxious. The logic was there. If they could not shake off this troublesome tail, opening the wormhole would be very dangerous. This was because when the wormhole was opened, the starship would consume the most energy. That was also the time when the starship was at its weakest. If the Albright starship made any move, Supreme Starship would be doomed. Guyu coldly stared at the light curtain. Listen to my command. Create a space bomb. Suyawan hesitated. Officer Gu, there's a certain risk in this. I know. Guyu nodded. Just pass down the order. The two starships were still flying at high speed, but very soon, a new situation occurred. The Albright starship's entire body would expand in circles of light from time to time, just like electromagnetic diffusion. With a whoosh, a light wave would spread out in all directions, extremely difficult to catch with the naked eye. Catherine immediately said, "The other party seems to be building a huge energy field. The material parameters of this star field are all changing." Shiwen frowned and did not say anything. She still could not determine Guyu's intentions. What exactly is the other party trying to do? Dong Yi also could not determine. Building a huge energy field during high-speed flight was theoretically possible, but it was not feasible in practice. This was because the amount of energy required was really astronomical. No starship could waste energy so extravagantly. However, Guyu insisted on doing so. The light curtain on Supreme Starship's side suddenly changed, just like a person's vision being distorted. The reconnaissance image almost completely turned into stripes. Catherine suddenly cried out in alarm. Not good. This energy field has already surrounded us. Everyone felt it too. The entire starship suddenly trembled violently. On the screen, which represented the 3D model of the starship, many parts of its exterior had been damaged, turning from a healthy green to a critical red. This was a sign that it was about to disintegrate. Sheng Tianming was still thinking highly of himself just a moment ago, but now his face was completely pale. It should be known that Supreme Starship was made from a mixture of nanochromium porcelain and 256 yuan superalloy. This material was practically the strongest shield in interstellar combat. What kind of attack could break through his own people's defense? Xiao AI was already silently explaining. According to the data in the database, the space bomb is one of the weapons that the Shenghao group has been researching in recent years. Its specific principle is to release an astonishing amount of energy to create a simple space-time rift during high-speed flight. Ding Ming frowned. Space-time rift. Xiao AI said, "Of course, this is not a real space-time rift. Instead, it squeezes and distorts the space of the nearby star field, moving forward like waves. This cycle is used to create an unprecedented pressure. Simply put, the starship is like a fish in the sea. Now that this part of the sea has been compressed and distorted, no matter how tough the fish inside is, it will be crushed and deformed." Ding Ming nodded inwardly. Understood. Little Rascal also explained this technology was originally still in development. I didn't expect the Shenghao group to have already developed it and put it into use. The advantage of this weapon is that it's not easy to discover and is very secretive. Once it's discovered, it'll be too late. However, its disadvantage is equally obvious, and that is that it consumes too much energy. No matter how much energy it consumed, Ding Ming believed that Shiwen would definitely have a way to deal with it. Activate the shield. All of the starship's operating energy will be concentrated on the shield, Shiwen decisively ordered. Following Catherine's emergency operation on the main control console, the bubble shield was once again placed on Supreme Starship's hull. This time, the shield's color was extremely dense, almost purple amidst the blue. It was obvious that the amount of energy it had gathered was astonishing. The force field created by the space bomb was very difficult to see with the naked eye when flying at high speed, but through the changes in the shield, it could be seen that the shield seemed to be under a strong pressure. The surface of a shield was crackling and popping slightly, like the kind of fireworks exploding into a ball. It was extremely dazzling and spectacular. Looking at this large ball of light flying at high speed in space, the people on the bright star didn't show the slightest bit of joy. This was because although the shield was being squeezed, it didn't deform as a whole, and the starship inside was also safe and sound. From this, it could be inferred that the energy reserves on Supreme Starship were extremely exaggerated. In truth, starship battles in space were ultimately a contest of energy. As long as you had enough energy, you could hold on no matter what you did. Once the energy consumption was too great, you wouldn't be able to hold on even if you used up too much energy. Supreme Starship's energy reserves clearly exceeded Gu Yu's expectations. Suyulin's tone also became a little hesitant. Officer Gu, if we continue to use the force field, we can still hold on for another 10 minutes. Should we continue? Gu Yu said coldly, increase the multiplier of the force field and continue to increase our flying speed. Close the distance between us and them. Don't worry about her energy reserves. I have plenty of ways to deal with them. Supreme Starship soon felt the pressure. Catherine turned her head and said, President Xi, the other party is still increasing their attacks. How should we deal with it? Xiwen's brows were tightly knitted, her eyes filled with disbelief. He won't be able to break through our defense by force like this. If we continue for a few more minutes, he should give up. Otherwise, even the return of his starship will be a problem. Or does he have more energy reserves than our Supreme Starship? That's impossible. Her confidence wasn't without reason. Supreme Starship was built with the resources of the entire Alliance, and it was specially built for this mission of the Rainbow Faction. Before they set off, they had already considered all kinds of extreme situations that they might encounter. At least in terms of energy reserves, Supreme Starship's self-preservation ability was comparable to a fleet, and the bright star opposite them was only a comprehensive ship in a fleet. The two couldn't be compared. Of course, if the bright star also had endless energy, then Xiwen, would also accept her fate. No one would be able to avoid this disaster. Suddenly, Kataga also exclaimed, Not good. Our communication system has been hacked. The other party is trying to force a connection. Xiwen's face was ashen. Shut it down quickly. Dingmeng sighed and muttered, I'm afraid it's too late. Chapter 508. The moment Dingmeng sighed, many of the light screens in the command hall went out. The red light of the alarm stopped flashing and was completely lit up. The system's voice resounded throughout the hall. High-risk warning, high-risk warning. An unknown unit has been detected entering the ship. Commander, please take immediate action. At this moment, Xiwen's expression turned extremely cold. She finally understood the other party's true intentions. The previous neutron beams and orbital bombardments were all used to test the depths of the Supreme, and this distorted space wasn't Gu Yu's trump card. The space bomb was only used to force the Supreme to use its energy to defend the shield, while the Supreme would take the opportunity to close the distance and use curved shadow transmission to teleport the individual units over. This was the real ruthless move. From this, it could be seen that there was definitely an expert hacker on the Bright ship who had forcefully hacked into their communication channel to locate the teleportation coordinates. In fact, Xiwen had also thought of this possibility, but she did not believe that Gu Yu could do it. Even Ding Meng did not dare to believe it. When he had fought with Lan Bing, Xi and Jie had used this move to escape from Songqing's spaceship and teleport everyone to Silman's Blazing Shark spaceship. When had it been more difficult than this? Whether it was the distance, the skill of the hacker, or the precision of the teleportation during high-speed flight, the difficulty this time was comparable to ascending to the heavens. It was not an exaggeration to describe it as a miracle, but Gu Yu had really done it. Right now, it was still unknown how many people had been teleported over, but there was one thing that everyone knew in their hearts. The people being teleported over were definitely not ordinary people. If ordinary origin ability users and soldiers were teleported over, it would be suicide. It had to be someone with tyrannical strength. This was the first time that Ding Meng had truly paid attention to the behemoth that was the Sheng Hao group. There was a reason why the Sheng Hao group had been able to suppress Starbao and dominate the Federation for so many years. Who knew how many people like Gu Yu there were under the Sheng Hao group? The extinguished screens quickly lit up again, But some of the surveillance images could no longer be seen because they had lost their signal source. It was obvious that the people being teleported over were in these areas. Cardegas said, through elimination, they were teleported to the crew's resting area. Shiwen's expression was serious. We can't let them reach the command center. Absolutely not. Sheng Tianming suddenly raised his hand. I'll go stop them. Very good. Shiwen nodded. Then I'll have to trouble young Master Ming. Sheng Tianming said that he was going to stop them, but he didn't move. He just turned around and gave a few instructions. Only then did Tianlong and the group of old men slowly walk towards the main passage. However, in Shiwen's opinion, the people of the Sheng Hao group were already dead because Tianlong's group was a representative of the Holy War Army, which was almost the strongest armed force inside the sovereign. Less than 3 minutes after Tianlong and the others left, the image fed back by the reconnaissance radar changed again. Kataga said in surprise, "A new flying unit has appeared on the same flight path behind us." Everyone was shocked. When they looked up again, they saw a starship from the Nuashing Empire quietly approaching from behind the Bright Connection. This was the Empire's most classic starship model, the Dragon Slayer. This was also a multi-purpose starship. Like the Sovereign and the Bright Connection, it was suitable for solo interstellar missions. This Dragon Slayer looked similar to the Frogman Kingdom Sturgeon. It was also fierce, and it was extremely fast and had fierce firepower. It was one of the best starships for the Empire to launch surprise attacks. After the Dragon Slayer caught up, it was extremely straightforward. Without saying a word, it started beating up the Bright Connection's butt. Cannons, pulse cannons, heat cannons, concentrated energy beams, particle lasers, all kinds of weapons were thrown at the Bright Connection's head as if they were free. It was very dazzling. In fact, these attacks from conventional weapons wouldn't pose too much of a threat to a starship like the Bright Connection. However, the Empire starship had suddenly appeared and attacked without warning. This caught the Bright Connection a little off guard. It had no choice but to activate its shield again to block the attacks. However, this Dragon Slayer was very cunning. It didn't follow behind the Bright Connection all the time. Instead, it suddenly rose and climbed to the top of the Bright Connection to start dropping bombs. What it dropped weren't bombs, but crystal clear balls of light. These balls of light seemed to have grown eyes and drilled into the top of the Bright Connection's head. It was unknown what kind of weapon the Empire used. A large number of these balls of light exploded in the vacuum before they even touched the starship. Boom, 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 boom. The explosions connected together and formed an extremely powerful shockwave that shook the Bright Connection. It was obvious that the entire Bright Connection was trembling to a certain extent. In this situation, it was necessary to slow down. This starship's commander is very smart. Shiwen inwardly judged. She knew that the Dragon Slayer couldn't destroy the Bright Connection through brute force. Therefore, the strategy they adopted was to delay the Bright Connection from chasing after the Sovereign. This was definitely reinforcements. However, she couldn't understand why the Empire's fleet would help her side. Soon, the force field created by the space bombs weakened, and the pressure on the Sovereign was greatly reduced. As soon as the Sovereign was freed, the Bright Connection began its counterattack. All of its cannons were aimed at the Bright Connection. Similarly, all kinds of weapons were thrown randomly as if they didn't cost anything. The two sides fought intensely for a moment. The scene was like two families throwing firecrackers at each other in the depths of space. "Can you establish a connection with the Norse Empire starship?" Shiwen asked. Catherine could only shake her head. "I sent a request, but they didn't accept." Shiwen also shook her head. It seemed that the Dragon Slayer's intentions weren't good. At this moment, Sheng Tianming's face was ashen. Even the muscles on his face were trembling. "What's going on?" Shiwen also noticed that something was wrong. Sheng Tianming swallowed with difficulty. Eldering, they seem to have lost contact." "What?" Shiwen couldn't believe her ears. She immediately turned to look at the map. This was a real-time dynamic map of the interior of Supremacy. It could be seen that the crew's resting area was still pitch black. This was a sign that the surveillance equipment had been sabotaged. The darkness was even spreading towards the armory in front. The enemy was obviously coming for the command center. Elder Ing and the others can't stop them. This time, it was Ming Huaji who asked. His tone was very hesitant. It's not that they can't stop them. Shuan stared coldly at the alloy door of the main passage. Her tone became very certain. It's that they can't stop them at all. An inexplicable chill suddenly ran down everyone's spine. Ing Tianlong and the other old men were all warrior-level monsters. How long had it been? At most, 20 minutes had passed, but they had lost contact with them. This meant that the Crusade's combat power was probably wiped out by the enemy. Even the masters of the Crusade were wiped out. If the enemy was coming, then no one on this ship could stop them. Don't panic. At this critical moment, Shiwen was still calm. She waved her hand decisively. It's meaningless to intercept them now. Their target is the command center. Everyone, gather here and gather all the combat power to stop them. Her train of thought was actually correct. Since the enemy was an expert, they should not be separated. Only by working together could they have a chance of winning. However, the large number of enemies she imagined did not appear. Half an hour later, 3 figures appeared in the main passage. To be precise, they were 3 bulky armors. Everyone was still unfamiliar with this kind of armor, but Ding Ming recognized it at a glance. Back on Cypress Planet, when he fought with Baiyu, Baiyu was equipped with this thing, the Hercules armor. Moreover, the 3 identical armors in front of him were improved in many ways compared to the one Baiyu was equipped with. Its functions must be more advanced and powerful. Little Rascal said, "This is normal. After all, Ding Ming, you left the Federation for several years. Shenghao Group should have developed this product well." Xiao AI's voice was very solemn. But their origin energy index is not high. From my scan, these 3 people have not even reached the warlord level. It's impossible for them to kill Ing Tianlong and the others. Ding Ming sneered. I'm afraid that these 3 are just small fries. The real boss is still behind them. His judgment was completely correct. Behind the 3 armors, 3 people without any armor were slowly walking side by side. The one on the far left was a burly man. He was also wearing Shenghao Group's individual interstellar armor and looked particularly fierce. The one on the far right was Su Yaluan. Her body was stained with a lot of blood. Obviously, she had just fought fiercely with Ing Tianlong and the others in the rest area. The fact that she could walk here proved that Ing Tianlong and the others had really been killed. The person in the center was actually Guyu himself. Guyu's expression was very relaxed. He did not even look at Shi-Wan and the others. Looking at his posture, he did not take the people from Sovereign seriously at all. Shi-Wan was about to speak when she was pulled back by Ding Ming. Ding Ming also frowned. Don't move. Let me go. Shi-Wan looked at Ding Ming in surprise. She knew that Ding Ming had some ability, but he could not be so arrogant. Not to mention the 3 monster-like armors. Anyone with a bit of foresight would know that Gu Yu and the other 2 people would be cannon fodder if they did not have the strength of an intermediate or advanced spiritual general. You are not their match. Ding Ming silently walked forward. Everyone looked at each other. Shi-Wan really wanted to ask, could it be that you are their match? However, she did not say it out loud. The atmosphere in the command center was already very tense. It was only when Ding Ming walked forward that Gu Yu seemed to have a trace of interest. He looked at him with a playful expression. Ding Ming. Ding Ming's eyes narrowed. You recognize me? Gu Yu said, your name is still very famous in Shenghao. Ding Ming said, it's an honor. Gu Yu was silent for a while before he said meaningfully, since you can live until now, I think you're not the kind of person who changes his mind easily. Therefore, I will not be like Hu Chengji, making empty promises. If you were a member of Shenghao Corporation, you would have been a member a few years ago. Ding Ming pondered and said, then what do you want? Gu Yu spread his hands and said, it's very simple. Come here and follow me. This starship is fine, and everyone here is fine. This condition is worth your consideration. Chapter 509. Even if I did, it would be hard for you to go back now. Ding Ming looked at the screen in the center. The all-illumination and the dragon-slaying ship were locked in a fierce battle behind them. Under such circumstances, it was impossible to use curved image transmission. Guyu wasn't surprised to see the fierce battle. He was so calm that it was scary. "It's okay. I can pilot your starship. It's the same." Su Lingyue couldn't help but say, "Why are you talking like our starship is yours?" Guyu glanced at her and didn't want to talk to her. He turned around and said to Su Yaluan, "This woman is quite pretty. Don't kill her later. I have use for her." Su Yaluan nodded with respect. "Got it. You." Su Lingyue was furious. She was one of the leaders of the Water Cherry Society and had never been insulted like this. What was more, Guyu's words implied that he really wanted to humiliate her. Su Lingyue couldn't stand it anymore. She flashed and appeared in front of Guyu and the other two in a flash. A cold light flashed. Clearly, she had attacked with a sharp weapon. However, for some reason, Su Lingyue seemed to have hit an invisible wall. She slid backward and stopped right next to Dingming. Everyone saw clearly that a sharp blade with a cold light had crawled out of Su Lingyue's sleeve. It was like a poisonous snake coming out of its hole. Normal people wouldn't have noticed it. Su Lingyue turned around in surprise. She looked at Dingming and asked, "What are you doing?" Dingming pulled a long face and didn't answer. Su Yaluan sneered with disdain. "You should be thanking him." Su Lingyue was even more surprised. "I have to thank him?" Su Yaluan sneered even more. "If it wasn't for him, you would have ended up like those old men. With your strength, you can only bully ordinary people. You should be glad that our chief, Gu, has taken a liking to you." Su Lingyue was at a loss for words. She was about to succeed when she felt a soft but strong suction force from behind her. She was sucked back. Of course, she knew about this kind of suction force, telekinesis. Only a few people present had telekinesis, but Dingming was the only one who had reached such a high level of telekinesis. However, what she didn't know was that the moment she flashed out, Guyu and the other two didn't move at all. Only when she got close to them did Su Yaluan's body erupt with an extremely shocking origin energy fluctuation. The reason why this fluctuation was so powerful was that it wasn't easy for others to detect it. However, Dingming was able to detect it. Although Su Lingyue had a good foundation, she wasn't on the same level as Guyu and the other two. Thus, Dingming decisively made his move. Now, most of the people present spontaneously retreated a certain distance and surrounded Shiwan. The scene in front of them was too strange, so it was better for everyone to be careful. Dingming said, "I'm afraid it'll be difficult for me to come over now." Guyu said, "Oh." Dingming said, "I don't like the way Sheng Hao does things." Guyu said indifferently, "The weak are prey to the strong. You've been in space for so long, so you should know this principle." Dingming said, "You're right, but you forgot to ask me if I'm willing to go with you." Guyu sighed and waved his hand slightly. "Then go and invite Dingming over." As soon as he finished speaking, the three Hercules armors stepped forward with solid steps. 3 huge alloy shields were erected in front of them, and each of them held a straight and shining vibration blade in their hands. The blades spun rapidly, making them look like 3 steel chainsaws. If they were still on Cyprus Ancient Planet, Dingming wouldn't be able to break free from these 3 iron lumps no matter how hard he tried. But now, Dingming was so strong that he couldn't move at all, just like Guyu. The 3 armors suddenly moved. The 2 on the left and right flanked Dingming with their shields, while the one in the middle leaped high into the air without using its shield or saw. Their intention was obvious. They wanted to capture Dingming alive. Swish, swish, swish. Dingming casually waved his hand, and the countless shards of the catoptric deflection returned to him, turning back into his belt. Dingming stepped forward and gently pushed the 3 Hercules. The 3 mighty and cumbersome armors suddenly fell to the ground. Obviously, the armors themselves were fine, but the soldiers inside were dead. Dingming had experienced this before. The Hercules armors had a self-destruct function, and the best way to detonate it was to kill the soldier inside instantly. The fragments of catoptric deflection could do this. Dingming did it easily, but Junling and Lu Qing, who were watching the battle from a distance, were horrified. Ding Ming's strength seemed to have soared by a lot, even more so than when he was at the Water Cherry Society's camp. At least now, they could not even see Ding Ming's moves clearly. They could not figure out what was going on, and they could not be envious. Seeing the three armors fall to the ground, Guyu looked at Ding Ming carefully. It seems that the three Hercules armors are not enough to move you. This time, he did not need to give the order. Su Yaluan and the big man flew up at the same time, one from the left and one from the right. At this moment, everyone felt a heart-wrenching chill sweep across their faces. This was definitely a powerful fluctuation of ice element origin ability. It directly swept through half of the command center, and another tyrannical energy was like a thorn stabbing into their faces, causing them to feel pain. Just these two fluctuations were already this powerful. Without a doubt, Su Yaluan and the burly man were definitely warlord-level experts. Ding Ming's body was not frozen, but a large cloud of steam appeared. He first pushed Su Yaluan's ice palm with one hand, and Su Yaluan was forced to take a few steps back. Then the big man grabbed Ding Ming's right shoulder with both hands and threw Ding Ming out with a spur of energy. Clang! An urgent sound was heard. A blue ice blade appeared in the air, whistling toward Ding Ming's head. Both sides attacked as fast as lightning, leaving no time to react. Ding Ming did not have time to dodge, so he simply opened his mouth and bit the ice blade. It would have been better if he did not bite, but once he did, the ice blade turned into a cloud of blue mist and instantly froze him into an ice sculpture. How could the burly man miss such a great opportunity? He flew forward again and kicked the ice sculpture fiercely. Lu Qing, Jun Ling, and the others moved almost at the same time. They were all worried about Ding Ming's safety, so almost all of them moved out. Unfortunately, Elephant, Junior Leopard, and the others could not get close at all. A large amount of ice energy spread around the area, and even the steel plate on the ground was covered with a layer of frost. The low temperature made it difficult to even move. The big man's tough type energy was obviously tough and fierce. Jun Ling and Lu Qing were forced back after 3 moves at most. As for the others, needless to say, they did not have the ability to participate in the battle at all. Another clang sound rang out. The mirror image of the diamond shield suddenly appeared on Ding Ming's body, and all the layers of ice immediately turned into nothingness. Facing the big man's crazy attacks, Ding Ming did not hold back and quickly returned the favor. He grabbed the big man's ankle with one hand and swung him out, smashing him directly into the steel wall of the gate. Of course, Ding Ming would not be polite to Su Yaluan either. While swinging the big man, Su Yaluan stepped forward again. Ding Ming decisively swept up, leaped into the air, and cut back with his hand. All of this was really done with full strength. He did not cut anywhere else but Su Yaluan's wrist. With a muffled bang, a large mass of air burst, and a large amount of air waves spread in all directions. Everyone had already retreated 50 meters away. This time, the one who suffered a big loss was Su Yaluan. Her entire body was sent flying, and she barely managed to shake her body in the air. After flipping several times in a row, she finally managed to stabilize herself. However, those who were paying attention could see that Su Yaluan had deliberately placed her right hand behind her waist to shield herself. Her wrist was swollen, and it was faintly purple. It was clear that the injury was not light. At this time, Guyu had no choice but to take 2 steps forward. I didn't expect you to improve so much in just a few short years. Ding Ming coldly said, It's not that I've improved so much. It's that your people are too weak. Even the people at Jizun did not believe these words. Lu Qing, a high-ranking member of the Water Cherry Society, was already an expert among the young geniuses. She could not even withstand 3 moves from Su Yaluan, but Ding Ming was able to heavily injure her with a single chop. It wasn't that she was weak, but that Ding Ming was truly strong. Guyu slowly took off his gloves and gently stroked the edge of his palm, as if he was stroking a sharp knife that was about to be unsheathed. The last time I fought with the Ling family was 7 years ago. There are a few guys in Star Rainbow who are really good. For example, that Tengma. It's a pity that he's not one of Sheng Hao's people. No one present could understand these words, but Dingming knew that Guyu was deliberately saying it for him to hear. Back at Star Rainbow's Blue Moon branch, Tengma could make Dingming feel extremely uncomfortable with just a slight pressure. Now that Guyu mentioned this person, Dingming immediately reacted. This Guyu's level was no lower than that of an intermediate warlord. In the end, it was still the same old trick, distracting you before the fight even started. The transit string must have paid a heavy price for you, right? Guyu continued to rub his palms. Dingming stared at him coldly. What are you trying to say? Guyu slowly raised his head. What I want to say is that you still have 1 minute to consider the conditions I proposed before. It's still not too late. Almost everyone was fooled by him. When he said that he still had 1 minute, he floated into the air without any warning. He pushed his palm down fiercely, and a ball of red and yellow source energy shot out from his hand and smashed towards Dingming's head. Dingming didn't dodge. It wasn't that he couldn't dodge, but that he didn't dare to. He knew very well how powerful the source energy released by the other party was. If this ball of light smashed into the ground and exploded, everyone around it would suffer. Pa! Dingming raised the ball of light with both hands and quickly activated the diamond star-fusing art in his body. However, this just happened to fall into the other party's trap. Guyu wanted him to stabilize this ball of energy, and then he would slowly descend. Chapter 510. Guyu's landing posture was also quite strange. It was the most primitive left foot kicking back and right fist punching downwards. To be honest, this posture was very ancient. Even the students in the academy would not use this posture when practicing martial arts, but Guyu had used it to attack. His landing was very slow, and the speed of his punch was not fast, but Dingming could not dodge it. Boom! Dingming's left shoulder was hit, and he could no longer see his entire body. All that could be seen was a large wave of red and yellow energy surging in all directions. The power of this punch was not to be underestimated. Even Sheng Tianming and the others were sent flying and fell far away like dead dogs. Lu Qing, Jun Ling, Liang Yi, and the others were still fine. They were only forced back a few steps, but they were also very surprised. If the aftermath of a punch was like this, they did not dare to imagine what it would be like to take a punch head-on. When they turned their heads again, they saw that Dingming's body had only tilted slightly. His injured left shoulder fiercely shook forward, and an invisible wave of energy was also sent flying back. Ding! A crisp sound rang out. Guyu's reaction was very fast. He quickly raised his right arm, and a butterfly-shaped layer of plating appeared on his forearm. This was obviously the Origin Steel Shield, and it was in front of him in time to block Dingming's Overlord's mountain-crushing force. Even so, he was still forced back a few steps, and the butterfly shield was full of cracks. Guyu stood still, looked at Dingming, and then lowered his head to look at the steel shield on his arm. He finally showed an expression of disbelief. This was an attack from an Origin ability user who was not even 25 years old. Even 5 minutes ago, he thought this was a fantasy, but now he was really looking at Dingming. Actually, he wasn't the most shocked. The ones who were the most shocked were Shi-Wan and the others. Right now, the steel plates beneath Dingming and Guyu's feet had caved in slightly. It was clearly caused by the force of their punches and vibrations. This was made of nanochrome porcelain mixed with 256 yuan superalloy. Even the starship's neutron beams could not penetrate it, but they were actually able to deform it. Shi-Wan and Dong, he suddenly exchanged glances secretly. Their meaning was obvious. I'm afraid the command center has to give up. This place will definitely be affected. There are too many examples of gods fighting affecting mortals. Little Rascal suddenly said, Dingming, you have to be careful. You've run into a real tough nut this time. Dingming nodded slightly. How could he not know? Guyu's earlier actions of floating, pushing, and punching seemed as childish and laughable as a fight between elementary school students. However, it had already revealed a lot of information to Dingming. This Guyu was a battle monarch who had combined the thermodynamic and toughness systems into one. His actions seemed simple, but the effects of confinement, high temperature, and sturdy shield were truly rare. Ding Ming dared to say that this person was far above Chu Ming Liang. Xiao AI said, "There's one more thing you can't overlook. Although he's one of Sheng Hao's people, based on his techniques, he should be from the Empire, a human true martial artist." Ding Ming actually understood this point. During his time in the Norse Empire, as well as after he obtained the Blue Spirit technique, he clearly understood that the experts of the Empire were very different from the experts of the Federation. The origin ability users of the Federation paid particular attention to martial arts and level of cultivation. In layman's terms, they were very entertaining when they fought, and there were all kinds of dazzling effects. Meanwhile, the origin ability users of the Empire paid more attention to the cultivation of raw strength. Simply put, their foundations were very solid, and they had a very deep foundation. Any casual move they made would have earth-shattering effects. Thinking of this, Ding Ming came up with a strategy. I can't let this guy drag things out. The longer I drag things out, the more dangerous it will be. You're at least 200 years old this year, right? Ding Ming suddenly asked out of nowhere. Guyu's eyes revealed a look of praise. Good eyesight, Ding Ming said seriously. I can go with you. Guyu frowned but didn't reply. Ding Ming pointed at the main hallway. Su Yaowen was standing at the entrance, her figure somewhat stooped. She had been injured quite badly by Ding Ming's hand chop. I want this woman, Ding Ming said. No problem. Guyu stared at him closely. She's yours now. You can use her however you want. Ding Ming said, Okay, let's go now. Actually, he didn't even say the word go because this was one of his old tricks. He would purposely distract you and wait for an opportunity to strike. This time, he didn't choose a backhand chop. Instead, he charged straight at Guyu. He raised his hand and unleashed a rushing punch. Due to the origin energy in his entire body, from a distance, it looked like a thick red light was flying straight at Guyu's face. Flame energy rushing punch was one of the Norse Empire's most commonly used and classic techniques. When he saw Ding Ming use it, Guyu didn't underestimate him. Instead, the look in his eyes grew even more serious. Boom! Another explosion rang out. Many of the steel plates on the ground were lifted up by the force of the explosion, flying in all directions. At this moment, casualties began to occur. Many of the workers in the back didn't have time to dodge, and many of them were caught off guard. They were either smashed in a meat paste by the steel plates or sliced in half. The crowd was thrown into chaos. A layer of origin substance had already appeared on Guyu's body, while Ding Ming's body began to emit a formless wave of heat. The two of them were engaged in a fierce battle in the main hall. Only sounds could be heard, but no one could be seen. All that could be seen were countless steel plates being lifted up, the walls being destroyed, and the light screens being extinguished one by one. The control system had obviously been damaged. Not long after, most of the people in the command center had retreated. Apart from Ding Ming and Guyu, who were still engaged in a fierce battle, only Junling and Lu Qing remained. Their concerns were reasonable. Even though Su Yaowen and the burly man at the entrance were injured, they were still capable of fighting. In addition, from the looks on their faces, it felt like they were about to pounce at any moment. Suddenly, a bolt of electricity as thick as an arm struck the ground. The electricity also flipped over the steel plates and exploded vertically towards Su Yaowen at the entrance. Su Yaowen naturally reacted. She immediately activated her dark ice power to create a massive wall of ice in front of her. Unexpectedly, this bolt of electricity split into several smaller bolts of lightning. The bolts of lightning seemed to have grown eyes as they attacked together, shattering the wall of ice like a tornado. At this moment, the bolts of lightning merged back into one and once again shot towards Su Yaowen. To be able to cultivate an electromagnetic type technique to such a level, there is no doubt that this person was a warrior-level expert. Su Yaowen turned her head and saw that Liang Yi was grabbing at the air with one hand. It was obvious that he was controlling this bolt of lightning from a distance. Careful! Ding Ming's voice suddenly rang out. The bolt of lightning had clearly struck Su Yaluan, but for some reason, it was bounced back at her at a much faster speed. Upon closer inspection, it turned out that a butterfly-shaped shield of origin substance had caught the bolt of lightning and guided it back towards Su Yaluan. While Guyu was engaged in a fierce battle with Ding Ming, he was still able to find the time to help his subordinate. The tough-type technique was originally focused on defense, so when the bolt of lightning struck the shield, the small shield shattered in a few hits. However, the origin energy fragments produced by the explosion shot towards Liang Yi like flying daggers. Liang Yi had never seen such a miraculous use of origin energy before. For a moment, he was stunned in place. At this critical moment, a figure pounced on him from the side and pushed him to the ground. However, the origin energy flying daggers didn't stop there. They continued to fly towards Junling's face. Junling subconsciously used the dagger close to her body to block. With a loud boom, the dagger shattered into pieces. The flying daggers exploded, and Junling was sent flying. Liang Yi fell to the ground, still in a state of shock. The person who had just caught her was Su Lingyue. Su Lingyue's calf had been cut by the flying daggers, and the wound was so deep that the bone was visible. At this moment, she was curled up on the ground. Xiaoyu, Liang Yi turned pale with fright. She had never imagined that Guyu would be this strong. On the other side, Junling's situation was even worse. The explosion had obviously injured her internal organs. When she was sent flying, she spat out a mouthful of blood. Fortunately, Lu Qing had reacted quickly and rushed forward to catch her. However, Ding Ming was enraged when he saw this scene. He quickly activated his 8th origin and clasped his hands together to form a fist, smashing it towards Guyu's head. Boom! This time, it wasn't as simple as an explosion. The steel plates on the ground were all deformed. Moreover, with Ding Ming as the center, a ring of origin energy and the Overlord's mountain crumbling energy vibrated. Half of the hologram in the command center was directly extinguished. Amidst the sandstorm, Guyu's entire body was completely shattered. Even though he had caught Ding Ming's fist with his palm, he was smashed to the point where he was forced to kneel on one knee. Furthermore, he was even sliding backwards. Ding Ming's explosive fighting strength had caused his internal organs to tremble. Pooh! Guyu, who was kneeling on the ground, also spat out a mouthful of blood. Officer! Officer Gu! Su Yaluan and the burly man both exclaimed as they ran over. One had to know that Guyu was an intermediate battle monarch, ranked 198th on the Holy Grail Federation's martial artist ranking. He was an all-powerful expert, yet he was actually injured by a brat like Ding Ming. The detection system on Su Yaluan's low-light glasses was activated once again. A series of conspicuous Arabic numbers were constantly changing. Finally, the string of numbers stopped at 135,500,000 points. See, Su Yaluan couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. She was really shocked to the point that she was numb. The system showed that Ding Ming's origin ability index was 135 million points. This was the strength of a beginner battle monarch. This 25-year-old brat was actually a battle monarch. No matter if it was in the Federation or the Empire, there was definitely only one such person. There had never been such a terrifying character in history. Guyu waved his hand, indicating for the two to step back. He stared at Ding Ming and wiped the blood from his mouth. He slowly stood up. Just now, he had already underestimated Ding Ming. Now, he had underestimated him again. Everything should be done thrice. If he made the same mistake a third time, then it wouldn't be as simple as just being injured. In Ding Ming's telekinesis vision, Guyu's entire body was also emitting an invisible flame. The raging fire wrapped around his entire body. This time, he didn't use the source steel shield because the ground was completely melted and turned into a light yellow color. This was the result of the metal system's source energy completely spreading out. The entire command center was completely lit up. It was like a golden world, dazzling everyone. Everyone was still curious, but Ding Ming suddenly shouted, "Let's go! Let's get out of here!" Chapter 511. When Guyu unleashed all of his origin energy, which was a combination of heat and body strengthening, the direct effect was that half of the command center had been turned into a hellish furnace. His body-strengthening origin energy was incredibly sturdy, but his heat and body-strengthening origin energy caused the temperature to rise by several thousand degrees. Most of the facilities would be melted into molten steel. At this moment, Guyu waved his palms in the air, and the golden force field formed by the origin energy system gradually began to change. Pieces of golden steel plates left the ground and formed many giant golden swords. These giant swords floated in the air, their shapes and sizes all different. The only thing they all had in common was that their tips were all pointed at Ding Meng. Xiao AI decisively said, "Be careful. His origin energy index has already broken through 400 million points. According to my calculations, the origin energy he released is also refined and pure origin energy. This value is indeed not below Chu Mingliang's." Ding Meng took a deep breath, and the 9 origin points in his body began to operate at their limits. He also didn't dare to be careless in the slightest. Guyu's eyes turned cold, and he pointed his finger. "Go!" Swish, 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 swish. More than 10 giant swords whistled toward Ding Meng. At this moment, all of the light screens in the command center were completely extinguished. Jun Ling and the others had already retreated to the main passage. In their eyes, what they saw was a completely golden light curtain. They couldn't see what was inside at all. Moreover, the light curtain was emitting waves of heat that could simply roast people. It was really too hot. Even a combat master-level origin ability user found it difficult to resist this heat. They didn't dare to imagine what the situation inside the hall was like. Ding, 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 ding. A series of rapid sounds rang out. The giant swords whistling toward them were all blocked by the Diamond Star Technique's crown mirror image. However, Guyu was still a battle monarch. The giant swords' momentum was blocked, but they didn't disappear. With Guyu's endless supply of origin energy, they continued to attack. These swords were either piercing, colliding, cutting horizontally, chopping furiously, or slashing diagonally. After being forced back, there were even 2 or 3 swords that repeatedly attacked with the momentum of colliding with each other, using all kinds of dazzling sword styles to advance. If Ding Meng's solitary sword of Zhao was said to be gorgeous and varied, then Guyu's hard and hot sword formation was simply earth-shattering and airtight. Only now did Ding Meng truly experience the might of a monarch rank expert. Every time these swords slashed at the crown shield, the resulting tearing effect was so strong that it made his scalp go numb. Every time a sword slashed at the crown shield, he could feel his soul throbbing along with it. It was a great destruction to the willpower of an origin ability user. "We can't let this go on. The shield will be destroyed sooner or later," Little Rascal hurriedly said. Ding Meng gritted his teeth and activated all of his origins. At the same time, he waved his hand, and the godlight bracer on his arm immediately turned into a pure white stream of light. In the distance, the data on Su Yaolun's low-light lens also surged along with Ding Meng's energy. 1500000000 200000000 250000000 300000000 350000000. At this moment, she couldn't help but cry out in shock. "No, this is impossible. This is absolutely impossible." The big man hurriedly asked, "How much is it?" Su Yaolun turned to look at him, her face full of shock and fear. "A total of 600 million. She also couldn't see the situation inside the shield clearly, only the red and yellow light. However, they were very clear that Gu Yuyu definitely couldn't reach this number. If Gu Yuyu couldn't reach this number, then who else could it be but Ding Meng? In reality, these numbers were meaningless to Ding Meng. His origin energy was far purer than others. Now that the Godlight Bracer had appeared, it meant that he was using the Godlight Bracer. As soon as this stream of light appeared, the crown shield immediately disappeared. The stream of light turned into a short, sharp spear of light that landed on Ding Meng's hand. Ding Meng easily dealt with everything. The huge sword that was flying towards him shattered with a ding-ling sound, turning into specks of light that dissipated within the force field. Ding Meng slashed with the back of his hand, and the huge sword that was flying towards him also shattered and disappeared. Shwa, 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 shwa. Ding Meng's hand speed was extremely fast. Several afterimages of light flickered in front of him, and all the huge swords that were flying towards him shattered without exception. The ding-ling-ling-ling sound was very pleasant to the ear. Ding Meng slashed with the back of his hand again, and the light spear turned into a cold, short sword. Now, all the short swords within the force field had disappeared without a trace. Gu Yu's eyes widened, and he revealed an expression of disbelief. This was the Starlight Sword array that he was most proud of. Not to mention how powerful this martial technique was, the number of people who could force him to use it could be counted on one hand. However, Ding Meng had broken through it so easily. Gu Yu gritted his teeth, spread out his hands, and suddenly raised them up. More than 10 huge golden swords once again condensed into shape. Kacha, kacha, kacha. Under Gu Yu's command, more than 10 huge swords combined together, transforming into an incomparably huge super sword. This sword was more than 80 meters long, and its entire body exuded an endless amount of energy. The so-called backup command center was actually a very good design. When Supreme was first built, such a situation was considered. Once the command center fell, the backup command center would come in handy. It was equivalent to a temporary shelter. The backup command center was designed like a standard starship's cabin. This was the core of the entire starship. The facilities used were the main mechanical control console and professional mode partitions. However, there were not many people left alive. Other than Shi-1, Dong Yi, and Kartika, the others were only Kuan Ran, He Qian, Ming Huaji, and a few others. Kuan Ran and He Qing sat on the ground, their bodies covered in blood. Ming Huaji was already unconscious on the ground and was being taken care of by a few students. Ding Meng felt a little helpless as well, because strictly speaking, he was the one who had caused these people's injuries. The shockwaves from the intense battle between him and Gu Yu had completely shaken these people off their feet. If they had not retreated quickly enough, they would have long been reduced to ashes in the command center. What happened? Ding Meng quickly stepped forward. Kartika's expression was grim. The main defense system has been greatly damaged. The system is still in the process of recharging and repairing. Ding Meng looked at the central screen of the main control console. The current image was a real-time reconnaissance image. At this moment in space, Supreme, Bright, and the Dynasty's Dragon Slayer formed a stable oblique triangle. Supreme was speeding at the front. Bright was maintaining the same level and speed as it, while the Dragon Slayer was in the sky behind Bright. The worst part was that the railguns of the Albright ship were burning the tail of the Albright ship, while the dragon-slaying ship was also using railguns to attack the top of the Albright ship. The shield of the Albright ship was gradually weakening, and the Albright ship was burning with raging flames. This was a sign that it was about to disintegrate. Ding Meng could tell that the Bright connection had probably received information about the situation on the Supreme ship side and was determined to fight to the death. Before it died, it would drag the Supreme ship down with it. How much longer can we hold out? Ding Meng asked. Catherine's expression was also very grave. She stared at the screen and said, "The energy shield can hold out for 3 minutes and 36 seconds at most." This meant that if Bright didn't explode in 3 minutes, then Supreme's main body would be hit. How much longer until the main defense system is completely repaired? Ding Meng asked again. Kartika shook his head helplessly. It'll take about 2 more hours. No starship would be able to hold out for long under this level of railgun fire. Of course, Bright's firepower wasn't likely to be able to hold out for 2 hours without stopping. However, everything had become unknown now, so everyone could only watch and wait patiently. Ding-Ming felt that he had been a little too careless. He had caused too much a ruckus when dealing with Guyu, destroying most of the facilities in the command center, and now he was in such a disadvantageous situation. In space, Bright's damage was worsening. More and more crystal flames were rising from the starship, and many of the steel plates and brackets were shattering and falling off the starship and into the depths of space. The Dynasty's dragon-slaying warship seemed to know Ding-Ming's predicament. The railguns kept increasing the firing rate, and they wouldn't stop until Bright exploded. Catherine said, "There's only 1 minute left." At this moment, the backup command center was filled with red lights. The alarm blared loudly, and the system's voice was cold and emotionless. "The system is losing control. The system is losing control." Shiwen frowned. "What's going on?" This time, it was Catherine, Kartika, and even Dong-E who were frantically operating the main control panel. "Someone's invading again." Kartika's brows were furrowed into a line. "We're losing control. Only 45% of the main authority is left." Shiwen said sternly, "Get it back quickly." Dong-E said nervously, "This will take time." Catherine said, 40 seconds left. All of a sudden, Liang-E covered his mouth, his eyes filled with horror. "What's going on?" Everyone followed her gaze and turned their heads. On the central screen, the dragon-slaying warship had stopped firing the railguns, and the blue beam had disappeared. If this change made everyone feel even more nervous, then the next strange scene happened. Bright had probably reached its limit, and its entire body had turned into a cuboid. Under normal circumstances, it would explode in at most 30 seconds. However, the expected explosion did not happen. The cuboid distorted and turned into the shape of a sharp arrowhead. Shiwen's expression changed, becoming indescribably terrifying. She quickly turned her head and shouted, "Dodge, dodge, quick!" She was practically shouting herself hoarse. Catherine and the other two did not even dare to raise their heads. They focused on hitting the various buttons and cursors on the main control panel, and all kinds of data were being refreshed rapidly. 15 seconds left, Dong-E said in a low voice. However, it was too late. In the real-time image, the Bright ship, which had transformed into an arrowhead, whizzed towards the tail of the Supreme at an incredible speed. It was only now that everyone understood that the Bright ship was not about to explode, but that it had used some kind of advanced technological acceleration system to rush up and perish together with them. On the screen, the cuboid behind them was getting closer and closer, and it was also getting bigger and bigger. Everyone's eyes were wide open as they stared at it. It's impossible for Shenghao Group to have a top expert in this field. XINGS smiled again, and his smile was very happy. If Chu Shaoqing had praised him, he might not have taken it seriously, but when these words came from Ding Ming's mouth, it was undoubtedly the highest level of praise. Chu Shaoqing clapped her hands. "Xiao Mei, arrange for the wounded to be sent to the medical bay. Arrange for the other friends to be sent to the rest area." The female officer immediately lowered her head. "Yes, Officer Chu." She won, and the others had not made a fuss. It was only now that everyone realized that Ding Ming was not from the God War Starfield. However, Ding Ming's background was not small at all. The Norse Empire had such a large fleet, but even the commander of the fleet had personally chased after Ding Ming. It was enough to show how important Ding Ming was to these people. Ding Ming said, "By the way, how did you guys get here?" Xing-E rushed to answer. "Ding Ming, you don't know, right? After we separated back then, Sister Chu has been fighting on the front lines of the Frogman Kingdom until she became the commander of the fleet." Ding Ming looked at Chu Shaoqing. Seems like you're good at commanding. Chu Shaoqing smiled and said, actually, Gu Yu is someone who defected from the Empire to the Federation. He was originally part of the Empire's military, and we've been tracking him. Ding Meng said, oh, there's such a background? Chu Shaoqing nodded and stopped smiling. After he defected, he went into hiding for many years. He only appeared near the Frogman Kingdom in recent years, which naturally aroused our suspicions. We also secretly followed the Frogman Kingdom starship to get here. Xing Yi could not help but say, Gu Yu is a battle monarch level powerhouse. Ding Meng, you must have encountered him just now, right? Ding Meng nodded. Yes, he's quite cunning. He actually teleported to our starship. Then, Xing Yi hesitated. What was the result? Ding Meng smiled. The result was that he went where he should have gone. As soon as these words were said, Chu Shaoqing, Xing Yi, and Xiao Mei all sucked in a breath of cold air. This meant that Ding Meng had already dealt with Gu Yu. Chu Shaoqing stared at him. Ding Meng, if I remember correctly, when I met you on planet TT-12, you were only an origin ability master. How long has it been? Xing's smiled. If I calculate, it should be 4 years and 8 months, close to 5 years. Chu Shaoqing was speechless. Taking everything into account, Ding Meng had only used 5 years to advance from an advanced origin ability master to a battle monarch. This speed of advancement was practically cheating. For a moment, she was filled with emotions. Back then, she had seen through Ding Meng's potential. She knew that Ding Meng would definitely achieve great things in the future, but she never expected that the current Ding Meng would actually grow to such a terrifying degree. She didn't even have a chance to launch any of her follow-up moves. Chu Xiaoqing's face was also filled with disbelief. This is too amazing, right? For what she could feel, Ding Meng didn't even use his origin energy much. He only used a slight fluctuation from his finger to push her back. The most important thing was that he had control over this kind of force. He had perfectly pushed her back to her original position. This proved one thing. From the moment she made her move, Ding Meng had already accurately judged her strength. The Ding Meng in front of her was really no longer the same Ding Meng from before. Xing walked up, his eyelids drooping. You women, you fight as soon as you see each other. Women should act like women. When he said this, his gaze drifted towards Jun Ling and Lu Qing. He had always had a sharp eye, so naturally, he could see that these two people had a close relationship with Ding Meng. It just so happened that these two women had distinct personalities. They just stood there and let him look at them. They were very generous and didn't seem to care at all. How should I address you two? Xing also found it interesting. Jun Ling said indifferently, Jun Ling, just treat me as Ding Meng's follower. Oh, Xing nodded thoughtfully. Then his gaze fell on Lu Qing. What about you? Lu Qing replied generously. Lu Qing, also a follower? Xing asked in return. Lu Qing was a little speechless. Her relationship with Ding Meng was really difficult to explain. Xing smiled. I understand. Lu Qing asked curiously. What do you understand? Xing smiled meaningfully. You have a good eye? But if it was a few years ago, even a stray dog wouldn't have spared a glance at this kid. But now, cough cough, you have to be mentally prepared. Your competitors will only increase in the future. Lu Qing couldn't help but blush. Is he very popular in the Empire Federation? Xing blinked and smiled. As far as I know, he seems to have a real girlfriend, misty, or something. Cough cough. Ding Meng coughed dryly and walked towards Chu Shaoqing. What do you plan to do now? Chu Shaoqing said sweetly. We've successfully received you. Naturally, we have to meet up with the main fleet. Ding Meng was silent for a moment, then said, try to contact the fleet now and see if you can still contact them. Is there a problem? Chu Shaoqing saw his frown and knew that there must be a reason. The staff in the communications area quickly reported, Officer Chu, we can't contact the fleet. Chu Shaoqing was shocked. What happened? The staff said, to be precise, the fleet suddenly lost its signal. Even quantum communication can't be found. We can't find a location of the starships of the Federation, the Frogman Kingdom, the Devouring World, and the Steel Mane Kingdom. They all seem to have disappeared. Chu Xiaoqing's expression became serious. She turned to Ding Ming. You must know what's going on, right? There are too many things worth pondering over. For example, that Guyu. The fact that he was able to find this place is enough to explain many things. Ding Meng said, Oh, XINGS said, Your Starbao Corporation is still developing warp mirror technology, but the Shenghao Corporation's fleet can already sail 2,000 light-years away. What does this mean? Ding Meng fell silent. XINGS said, The starship technology of the Steel Mane Empire and the Frogmen has always been behind, but they still managed to find their way here. Isn't this worth pondering over? Ding Meng said, Based on what you said, things aren't as simple as they seem. XING nodded. According to my observations, the void ray that came from the Devourer world this time is very different from the other beasts in the past. If it was that beast that chased after your starship, our 3 starships combined wouldn't be its match. Ding Meng hesitated. You mean, XINGS said, That's right. This isn't a coincidence. Someone must have deliberately leaked the information about this strange star system so that everyone can investigate it. Ding Meng fell silent again. He now understood what the singularity had said to him in the temple. Although the enemies of the Mao Xing civilization couldn't enter this star system, they hadn't given up on their pursuit. They were still painstakingly searching for clues. But the question was, who were the enemies? Or rather, who were the enemies? Where are they hiding? How would they know all this information? And how could they spread the news to the 6 families? Little Rascal suddenly said, Xinjia is very smart. It seems that he has already realized this problem. Xiao AI said, That's right. He must also be from the Green Tree race. Since he knows about the singularity and the Holy Spirit, he will come into contact with the Mao Xing civilization sooner or later. Xian sighed. I just don't know if the Divine War Starfield is in the same situation as us. Ding Meng said, It seems that we can only find out when we return. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.